And we are live. Welcome to Tonight in America. I'm your host, Dontarius Jones, and we have an exciting show today for you. It is 1:32 a.m. in the morning. It's technically a Friday morning. So I want to welcome you to tonight's show. Tonight we are reacting to two of the yesterday and the day before that's national intelligence testifying in front of a Senate committee hearing. So we're going to react to both, honestly speaking, because as you can see right here, I have both pulled up and they're like 2 hours long, each of them. So I'm going to try to skip ahead on most of them. So on certain issues, because we want to highlight the most important issues of what they were talking about at both of these testifying committees. And then we're also going to cover, where's going to be our first story today. We're talking about Israel striking, Israel striking on Iran's gas field, risk escalating attacks on energy sites. We're going to just go ahead and jump right into that right now, actually. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and just jump into it, everything right now, because it's going to be a long show because I got to react to both testimony committees. So I got to be on stream for quite a while. So if you're ready to stick around, make sure you like the video, share the video, whatever. If you know somebody that loves political content, that love political analysis, just let them know to come watch the show right now. But yeah, we're gonna jump right into everything right now. So Israeli strike on Iranian gas field, risk escalating attacks on energy sites. This was a couple of days ago, and an Israeli strike on a key Iranian gas field Wednesday raised fears of an escalatory spiral that will put the region's energy facilities at greater risk of being targeted during the war. Gulf Arab states expressed strong concerns about the fallout from the attack, which struck the giant South Pars national gas field that Iran shares with Qatar. An advisor to Qatar's prime minister condemned the Israeli strikes on a post on X. The Israeli targeting facilities linked to Iran's South Pars field, an extension of Qatar's North Field, is a dangerous and irresponsible step amid the current military escalation in the region, he said. The United Arab Emirates said targeting the field posed a threat to global national security. Iran's military joint command threatened to respond by escalating the war in new ways. The country's semi-official news media carried threats to retaliate against energy facilities across the Gulf. Supplies of Iranian gas to Iraq was cut off after the attack. Iranian state media reported explosions in multiple sections of South Pars field on Wednesday. Israel attacked the field to cramp a key economic pipeline of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. People familiar with the matter said the U.S. was aware of Israel's plan to attack the facility and didn't oppose it, an American official said. So how big of a issue, how big of a major escalation is? Well, instead of me go ahead and tell you this, I'll just go ahead and just show you. Oops. Make sure. Okay. So. All right. So we're going to ask Grok right quick to go ahead and show us right quick to give us a little bit of overview. Instead of me just telling you, I could just put the numbers in front of the screen right now so you guys could really give a better understanding of this. So as you can see right here, it's giving up for us right quick. All right. So let me just go ahead and give you guys a clear example of like what is South Pause. South Pause is where all of Iran's gas field pretty much is kept at. That is all. That is the majority of where all their gas field is pretty much like housed. Like 70%, like it says right here. South Pause is the world's largest natural gas field. Show with Qatar's North Field portion. Iran's size supplies around 70% of the country's domestic natural gas. That's keyly important to understand that part right there. It's 70% of Iran's domestic natural gas. It pretty much is like, if you have to look at it at a broader scale, that's all their natural gas. If you have to look at it, like 70% of their natural gas is at South Pause. It's a vital economic lifeline for Iran, tied to revenue and domestic energy needs and exploit potential reported damage and impact. Israeli airstrikes hit onshore processing facilities and treatment plants in the hub in Bashar province, I believe that's pronounced it, linked to several phases of the offshore field. Reports describe damage to multiple gas treatment facilities, phases 3 to 6, fires breaking out, some described as massive with huge plumps and sections taken offline to control fires and prevent spread. So major escalation right here. Let me turn my air on right quick. So, like I said before, this is has major implications and major escalation written all over it, because the Israelis knew full well exactly what this meant and what was going to happen right after the fact. So they attacked South Pause knowing that was where 70% of Iran's domestic gas field is housed. And they still went ahead and attacked it, and even so much so it took the president off surprise, because like even he had to make a statement publicly and said that don't do it again. He was aware they were going to do it, did try to stop them. They went ahead and attacked it, and all he could say in like to basically kind of save his own ass was like, all right, I told Israel go ahead with it, but just don't do it again after the fact. Now that just pretty much just gives Iran the green light to go ahead and attack every other important energy or gas like oil refineries across the Gulf. And that's what they've been doing for the last 48 hours now. So one estimate suggests around 40% of South Pau's output, about 100 million cubic meters per day, was temporarily disrupted due to their processing hub being affected. Iranian officials stated the fires were brought under control relatively quickly, and no fuel production loss figures have been publicly confirmed yet. Some sources describe the intermediate physical damage as limited or not catastrophic to the entire field, affecting a relatively small section per some U.S. statements. But the strategic and symbolic hit is huge. No reports indicate widespread destruction of the offshore platforms themselves or total field shutdown. It appears focused on processing offshore infrastructure. So, as it outlines right here, this is the broader consequences. The attack triggered immediate Iranian retaliations, including missile and drone strikes on energy sites across the region. Extensive damage to Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG hub, the world's largest, plus hits on facilities in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, UAE, and even an Israeli refinery. This has turned the conflict into an energy war, with global energy and natural gas prices surging sharply. Regional gas spikes in Europe, US, Asia. Qatar condemned strike as dangerous and irresponsible, and there's tension over whether the U.S. had prior knowledge. Trump publicly distanced the U.S., claiming no involvement or foreknowledge, while other reports suggest coordination. Like I mentioned before, he had knowledge that they were going to do this, and to try to save his own, and to try to just basically kind of like save his own hind and the U.S.'s hind in this regard. He just said that, yeah, go ahead along with it, but after the words, don't do it no more. because it's going to cause global. It's going to cause global. It has very broad global consequences right now, as we're seeing right now in the last 24 to 48 hours. Iran has retaliated. Not only have they retaliated, they have targeted other important energy infrastructures across the region, whether that be Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait. They've targeted all the important energy infrastructures because theirs was targeted by the Israelis first, and the Israelis don't even care. They did it, so they just go ahead and just attack the Iran's important energy. Fuck, excuse me, I can't talk right now. They've attacked Iran's important energy infrastructure just because they were hoping for this to get out of control and to get basically just to spin into chaos. That's just what they were hoping for. So the Israelis were hoping for pure chaos. That's what they were pushing for. And now they got it. And all they could do is just rub their hands right now while Iran attacks all the other important infrastructures across the Middle East to drive a wedge between all these other Middle Eastern countries and Iran, to where these countries are getting more and more aggravated, per se, and getting more agitated to the point where they might start thinking about sending troops on the ground or possibly other retaliatory actions against Iran. So that's what this escalation is going to lead to. Overall, while the physical damage to South Pars itself seems moderate and partially contained so far, not a complete knockout blow to Iran's gas production, the strike is considered very bad strategically. It risks long-term repair delays, economic pressure on Iran, potential environment issues from fires, and further dangerous tit-for-tat attacks that threaten global energy security. The full extent of the production impact may take days or weeks to clarify as assessments continue amid the active war. So let's go ahead and jump into some reactions from our good friends at Al Jazeera.
Iran has issued evacuation warnings for several oil and gas facilities across the Gulf. It comes after Israeli strikes hit a key gas facility in Iran's southern Bushehr province. The plant processes natural gas from the South Pars North Dome field, which Iran shares with Qatar. A spokesman for Qatar's foreign ministry has condemned Israel's attack as a dangerous and irresponsible step. Well, the IRGC has named several facilities in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, saying they will be targeted by military strikes in the coming hours. It said that repeated warnings had previously been issued to Gulf governments, accusing them of pursuing what it described as a dangerous path. We're live this hour with our correspondents in Tehran, Dubai, Ramallah, and the White House. We're going to first to Tehran. We're going to speak to Mohammed Val. So we're hearing more about this targeting in the province in southern Iran. What do we know?
Yes, we know that As-Salwiya in Bushehr has been attacked at one of the biggest oil and gas facilities in Iran, and that fire broke out in some sections of that facility. The authorities say they are putting the matter under control and that the area has been evacuated of the workers of the factory. But at the same time, Iran says this is a red line.
Also, I'll be back in a couple of hours too as well, so I'll try to do like 2 streams back to back. So this is going to be the first stream also reacting to the National Intelligence Committee testifying. So we're going to react to these two right here. The national security officials testify on global threats to the U.S. We're going to react to this one on March 18th, and we're going to react to the other one just like that was streamed like 18 hours ago. So these are the first two we're going to react to today. And then what we're going to also react to tomorrow on the next stream, we're going to react to Tucker Carlson's interview with Joe Kent, and Benjamin Netanyahu held a press conference. We're going to react to those two right there on the next stream. And some other couple of important topic videos that we could probably discuss too as well. So this one's going to be about the these two testifying committee hearings, and then of course we're reacting to like Israel's attack on Iran's South Pars gas infrastructures too as well. So this is going to be this stream, and then we're going to come back with the Tucker Carlson and the Joe Kent's one at just probably like a couple of hours. I'm probably not going to sleep tonight, so I'll stay up, do this stream right here, then wait a couple of hours, and I'll come back on for the second stream or whatever, so we can try to knock out 2 streams back to back, because I missed just yesterday. So try to give you guys as much content as I can right now, because I've been a little lazy the last couple of weeks with the content, but I'm trying to push out as much as I can right now.
The armed forces have issued an evacuation order for many facilities in the Gulf region. I'm going to tell you some of those names of some of those facilities. Al Jubail Petrochemicals in Saudi Arabia. Also the Samarf refinery in Saudi Arabia. You have Ras Gas, Gas Lafan in Qatar, and also other facilities in the same countries. So about 5 or 6 oil and gas facilities in the Gulf region are now under threat because the Iranian armed forces have said that in the next few hours they are going to retaliate with attacks on those facilities and that they should be evacuated. Iran has always warned that this war should not take a turn that is going to be destructive and very costly to the region. It has warned the Gulf countries against allowing the Americans to use their airspace and their land and their sea for attacks against Iran. And also it has always been saying that if Iran's oil facilities are attacked, it will retaliate in kind against the same facilities in the Gulf region.
Let's go to Zain Basravi, who's in Dubai. Zain, we've sorted out the technical problems. Let's talk about the evacuation orders that Iran has issued as a result of that US and Israeli attack on the gas processing plant in southern Iran. What more can you tell us about the evacuation orders?
Well, we're 3 weeks into this war, and throughout the course of that time, GCC countries have seen retaliation from Iran in an escalatory manner. Throughout the course of the last 3 weeks, multiple attacks on multiple places, only getting worse. Throughout the course of today, we saw escalating attacks, missiles, drones, and now, by the end of today, it is likely to escalate, perhaps exponentially so, following these attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure. They have vowed they will retaliate, and they have said at least 5 different locations in 3 different countries, in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, will be targeted as per what the Iranian government has put out in terms of a warning. They've said to stay away to citizens and residents around the following facilities, a warning to stay away from oil facilities in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, the Samref refinery in Saudi Arabia, Al Husn gas field in the UAE, Jubail petrochemical complex in Saudi Arabia, the Mesaid petrochemical complex and Mesaid holding company affiliated with Chevron, they say, in Qatar, and Ras Laffan refinery also in Qatar, phases 1 and 2. It's very specific here. And we should remind people that at the beginning of the war, in the first 10 days of the war, there were attacks on an oil refinery in Saudi Arabia, on Ras Laffan, the gas refinery, liquid natural gas refinery in Qatar. Iran denied being responsible for those attacks. They said they didn't do it. Now, whether or not you believe them, countries in the region didn't. They still accused Iran of carrying out those attacks. Iran denied it. Here, they're stating very clearly that we intend on targeting these locations and you should leave the area. And they have said, after repeated warnings given by Iran, that it would do this. Their energy infrastructure coming under attack, they're going to mete out a tit-for-tat response. Now, we also have a reaction from Qatar's foreign ministry, the spokesman Majid al-Ansari, reacting to this, saying the Iran South Pars field being targeted by Israel, which extends into Qatar's North gas field. It is a dangerous step. Targeting energy infrastructure is a threat to global energy security. The people.
Yeah, even Qatar, even they've said that that was stupid and irresponsible on the Israelis' parts or whatever. As much as these Gulf countries are trying to stay out of the conflict as much as possible, they're being attacked simultaneously. They're literally getting attacked just for being in proximity of all missiles and drones or whatever, and even housing U.S. bases on their land. So their patience is amazing because I'm surprised they have not jumped in at this point, because they're trying not to get themselves tangled up into war because war is bad for the economy. How we know this? Because our economy is taking a hit right now because of this war. Our gas prices are going up daily. They literally I think a barrel of gas right now has just reached like over $103 for a barrel of gas right now. So we are technically we're going to start feeling more and more of the effects of this as time goes on, because gas is only just going to go up. It's not going to be a problem that the Trump administration can just fix overnight. This is not a problem that could just could be snap of a finger and then the problem's gone completely. No. This problem is going to keep getting worse before it gets better. So if you're listening to them telling you how they can fix the problem of what solutions do they have, the solutions are not realistic solutions at all. It's just basically just telling you what you want to hear. It's just not to tell you, and they're always sit here and tell you like, don't be a doomer. Don't be such a doomer. Don't be such a gloomy doomer, whatever, to believe in like the worst case scenario. But no. This is a worst case scenario because we shouldn't even be in here in the first place. And even if we were to pull out right now, there's no guarantee that this war will just like literally just end. There's no guarantee that Israel and Iran are still not going to fight. There is no ceasefire. There is no deal right now that's going to be brokered. And why should Iran, honestly speaking, why should they take a deal? They don't really have a reason to trust anybody right now. They've been lied to by the U.S. Israel damn sure does not want to at all come to a ceasefire or agreement. They just want the destruction of Iran. And it's a good video too as well. After this one, I'm going to show you guys a good video about what is the purpose of all of this. And I mentioned it before on previous streams, but the purpose of it is like Greater Israel. And I have a video right here that's going to outline, basically to give you like an overview and give you a clear explanation of what Greater Israel really looks like.
Of the region and the environment. A very clear warning, a very clear reaction from Qatar's Minister of Foreign Affairs there.
And same as with remembering, of course, that apparently there are Gulf countries meeting in Riyadh later to discuss the security challenges that the region is facing. What more do we know about that meeting?
Well, in the beginning of the day when the meeting was announced, it was really going to be addressing the last few weeks, a status quo kind of continuous bombardment of these Gulf Arab cities as part of the retaliation. But just to illustrate the day's events, how dynamic this conflict is, there's been targeted assassinations, attacks on energy infrastructure. Israel saying they're going to kill anyone in the Iranian leadership that they want to. Iran saying that they're going to use more potent and precise weapons and more heavy weapons to carry out its retaliatory attacks on whoever they deem necessary, wherever they deem necessary. The escalation just in the last 10 or 12 hours has been exponential. So this meeting that Riyadh has called, where foreign ministers of Gulf Arab countries, other Arab countries, Islamic countries, was with the aim of further consultation and coordination on ways to support the security and stability of the region. It's going to take on a great deal more urgency and immediacy now with these attacks lined up by Iran, planned for the coming hours. What the leaders in the Gulf Arab states, these people caught in the middle geographically and politically in this war, will be trying to do is bringing political pressure to bear, bringing diplomatic pressure to bear, to try to have the voice of reason rise up above the din of all this violence. But the reality is, the longer this conflict goes on, the more weapons that are used, the more severe the attacks are by Israel and the United States against Iran, by Iran in retaliation, the softer the voice of reason becomes. And that's really the challenge for Gulf Arab leaders that are continuing to push for diplomacy as a way forward.
That's Zain Bashrawi breaking that down for us from Dubai. Zain, thank you very much indeed.
All right, so I want to show you guys right here pretty much a good explanation of like what exactly is Greater Israel. What does it look like? What is the historical, ancient, religious purpose behind it? This one out here is good videos from Middle East Eye and MEE Explains, all from the same channel, same company, of course, but they give a very good explanation about what is Greater Israel and was this. And it also goes over exactly the historical context of exactly what this really looks like and why is it that this conflict is really happening and what is the purpose of it. Because all this conflict does, it is towards that purpose of Greater Israel. It's towards the land expansion. It's towards that inevitable leap towards global superpower. Because ultimately that's what Israel wants. They want to be a global superpower. So how do they get global superpowerhood? The only way for that to happen is like 1, land expansion, 2, broker deals with other powerful countries in order to make great trading deals, and 3, eliminate any and all threats to you that can pose a significant threat to your rise to global hegemon. How does that happen? Well, another thing we have to bring up, which this has nothing to do with this, but it's more of like everything to do when it comes to basically the clean break memo. Now, I'll save that one for another video right now, but this one right here outlines Greater Israel and gives you guys a clear indication of what it is. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into this one.
A few weeks ago, I came across this interview.
אתה מתחבר לחזון? מאוד.
They said phrases like the Promised Land and Greater Israel. Phrases I'd heard before, but wasn't sure exactly what it meant. I had to find out. What is it? Myth? Conspiracy? A random scribbling from the father of Zionism? Or something much more sinister? A vision that is very real and very much at play. To understand it, let's go back to the turn of the 20th century and meet the founder of modern-day Zionism, Theodor Herzl. An Austro-Hungarian Jewish journalist and lawyer, initially believed Jews could assimilate into European culture, but after witnessing growing anti-Semitism in Vienna, including anti-Jewish protests, he soon concluded that only a sovereign Jewish state could provide security. His eyes set on Palestine and other parts of the Middle East. In his diary, he wrote that the Jewish homeland should stretch from the Brook of Egypt to the Euphrates, a line taken from the book of Genesis, where God promises Abraham's descendants the land between those rivers. This Greater Israel vision includes Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. And this vision would grow in the next generation of Zionist thinkers. 2 decades later, Palestine would be under British mandate rule. The British facilitated mass Jewish migration in line with their commitment to establishing a national home for the Jewish people, while also falsely promising Palestinians an independent state. Tensions rose and the British clashed with a growing Jewish population that felt constrained by British rule. And Ze'ev Jabotinsky, a Zionist activist and military leader, would carry Herzl's legacy and create the ideology of revisionist Zionism, the belief that Jewish sovereignty could only be secured through force. You see, Jabotinsky was unimpressed with the current way Zionists in Palestine were acting, too cautious and diplomatic, willing to negotiate with the British and others. He argued that Palestinians would never accept Jewish rule voluntarily, so Zionism must advance under an iron wall of military power. He endorsed the slogan both sides of the Jordan River, meaning not just Palestine, but the whole of Transjordan belonged to the Jewish state. In fact, he even wrote a song named The Two Banks of Jordan, which was actually used as the anthem of the youth movement Beitar, the revisionist Zionist youth group founded in 1923. The British, wary of his influence, exiled Jabotinsky back to Europe in 1930. And we see this ideology expand in paramilitary groups like the Irgun, Sterngang, and Haganah, who would later form the Israeli Defense Force.
Some troops of this force are continuing their training, others go out on patrol, while behind the trouble scene...
They committed terrorist acts, both against the British and the Palestinians, all for the sake of pushing the vision of Greater Israel. Irgun's emblem, a map of Palestine and Transjordan. They utilized violence to achieve their vision of Greater Israel, terrorizing Palestinians and leading attacks against the British, including the 1946 Irgun bombing of the King David Hotel, which housed the British military headquarters. 91 people were killed. During the Nakba, or catastrophe, the paramilitary groups attacked and ransacked Palestinian cities and villages. In April 1948, just 1 month before the creation of the State of Israel, Zionist militants committed the Deir Yassin massacre. According to a 1948 UN report, the killing of some 250 Arabs, including men, women, and children, took place in circumstances of great savagery. And to be clear, it wasn't only revisionist Zionists who believed in this expansionist ideology. The liberal Zionists, led by the founder of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, shared a similar goal. You see, in 1937, the British Peel Commission proposed a partition of Palestine into separate Arab and Jewish states due to all the escalating violence. This partition was publicly accepted by Ben-Gurion and his Socialist Mapai Party, but privately, his intentions were clear. In a letter to his son, he wrote, "The acceptance of partition does not commit us to renounce Transjordan. We shall accept the state in the boundaries fixed today, but the boundaries of Zionist aspirations are the concerns of the Jewish people." For Gurion, the creation of the State of Israel was his primary goal, with expansion being a later step. Then came 1948, the year that Israel was established, with Gurion as its first leader. When declaring the State of Israel, one key factor is omitted from Israel's Declaration of Independence: its borders. Pinchas Rosen, then Israel's Minister of Justice, demanded that the declaration state Israel's borders clearly and legally. But Gurion refused, saying that once Israel had built up its strength, it would abolish the partition and take the whole land of Israel. By leaving the borders undefined, Ben-Gurion ensured Israel could later expand its territory through wall and armistice lines, rather than being restricted by law. And this quickly benefited Gurion. After the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Israel expanded its territory from the roughly 55% allotted by the UN partition plan to about 77%, while over 750,000 Palestinians were displaced during the Nakba. Gurion's goal was ultimately the same as that of Jabotinsky, but he was willing to take a slower pace by working alongside the British. Israel's borders shifted once again after the 1967 war between Israel and surrounding Arab states. On the eve of the attack, Israeli Minister Yigal Allon said, "In a new war, we must avoid the historic mistake of the War of Independence, and must not cease fighting until we achieve total victory, the territorial fulfillment of the land of Israel." The outcome of this war would lead to Israel occupying the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and the Sinai Peninsula. Now, Israel would return the Sinai Peninsula as part of Camp David, but it now occupied the whole of historic Palestine, expelled over 300,000 Palestinians, and still occupies these lands to this day. The victory of 1967 not only redrew borders, but also revived the expansionist vision. By 1977, several right-wing parties had united under the Likud banner, with Menachem Begin becoming prime minister. The revisionist dream, including the vision of Greater Israel, pressed on within the party, and wherever soldiers went, settlers were quick to follow. However, the lands Israel gained in the 1967 war were once considered negotiable. In 1993, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin and PLO leader Yasser Arafat agreed to the Oslo Accords, a peace treaty in retreat from its occupation of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, granting Palestinians restricted self-rule. But to many Palestinians, the Oslo Accords felt less like peace and more like a false promise. And it wasn't just Palestinians who didn't like the Accords. Rabin faced massive criticism from the far right, and demonstrations against him and the Oslo Accords took place, with Netanyahu himself, who was head of the Likud party, taking part in these demonstrations and giving speeches. Rabin was even threatened by none other than Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's current Minister of National Security. And in 1995, Rabin was assassinated by Yigal Amir, a far-right extremist. The Accords, intended to pave way for a two-state solution and stop settlement expansion, failed to deliver. Instead, they created the Palestinian Authority, divided the West Bank into 3 administrative areas, and by 1996, brought a young Netanyahu into power. Since then, settlement expansion has only accelerated. Today, there are more than 700,000 Israelis living in illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and 31,000 in the Golan Heights in Syria. Daniela Weiss, the so-called godmother of the settler movement, says it plainly.
Even if you take Netanyahu now, he's very happy about what we do here and also about our plans.
She even holds up a laminated map of Greater Israel.
No, this is...
You can argue that the left wing and the right wing in Israel all have different ideas about what Greater Israel is and how they want to go about getting it. The right wing, which is Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, Netanyahu, they want this to come to fruition. They want the land expansion. They want the global superpower that comes with it. The left wing party is more of like It's like any other left-wing party, any first world society, or in their cases, they're in the Middle East. They call themselves a first world democracy, even though Benjamin Netanyahu's been the longest running prime minister in Israel's history. The left-wing party is more of like, kind of like any other left-wing party, like I mentioned before. They're like, they're not for the idea of greater Israel. They want excuse me, fuck, I can't talk. They want a two-state solution for Palestinians. They are not about like the land expansion, not like the hard right, but at the same time, can you really like argue that the left-wing party like Ehud Barak, who was a former Israeli prime minister, can you really argue that he's really like against the idea of greater Israel? Like, it's really kind of hard to argue that, because like you look at the left-wing side of Israel, they're not. If greater Israel does happen, I don't think any of those guys are going to be in a rush to reverse it at all. Quite frankly, I don't think there is a right or a left issue on this in Israel. I don't think the arguments, the debates they're having at all is just like authentic. It's more of just like a facade. If anything, I think they are for greater Israel, regardless if you look right or left. The people itself, they love the idea of a land expansion. They love the idea of them fulfilling what they call prophecy for them, because they're God's chosen people. That's what they want. They want the idea of a greater Israel. They want the idea of Israel becoming a global superpower. So when I hear this premise about like some left-wing figures in Israel, that may be the case. That may be the case that they are, but you really look at like the philosophy, we really look at like the Jewish eschatology, you look at all these factors that play into the history of Jews in Israel, the Israelis. I don't think no side of the political spectrum in the Israeli society would be against land expansion. I don't think they would be against greater Israel at this point. Especially considering that majority of the people, if there was a poll done, I guarantee majority of Israelis would support this. Regardless of like, you have some liberals probably in Israel that are against like the humanitarian disaster that happened in Gaza. You know, what's going on in Lebanon with them constantly bombing, public civilian areas. I still don't think that majority of the Israelis would not be against greater Israel. They would actually be in support of it.
The promise of God to the patriarchs of the Jewish nation.
And Netanyahu has spoken openly of his deep connection to the vision of Greater Israel, calling it a mission for the generations. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich appeared at a memorial in Paris in front of a map of Israel stretching into Jordan, declaring that the Palestinian people do not exist. In a 2024 documentary, he repeated this, saying that the future of Jerusalem is to expand the Damascus.
Yeah, Smotrich and Ben Gvir are two of the most vile human beings I've ever seen on the planet, bro. This pause and I kind of paused it at the right time. This guy is crazy, bro. Smotrich is literally like an insane. Like, I believe he was arrested. I believe he got arrested for some type of crime, heinous crime that he did. And the crazy thing about it, Benjamin Netanyahu actually elected to have this guy part of his cabinet. Him and Ben Gvir, who are open about them wanting greater Israel, or open about how much of like joy they seek in like expelling the Palestinians from their own sections of Palestine where they're housed at, and just basically expanding Israel for the purpose of greater Israel. These guys are open about it. Benjamin Netanyahu is not as much as open as they are. These two right here are two of the most craziest bastards walking alive right now, currently speaking.
And he's proposed to annex the West Bank. Soldiers have been seen wearing badges etched with the map of Greater Israel. Netanyahu was handed an amulet inscribed with the map, described as his personal vision, and calls the vision a historical and spiritual mission. It's evident now that Greater Israel is not a myth, not a conspiracy, but a very real plan of those in power in Israel. Its exact definition and borders may be presented in different ways, but its purpose has always been the same: to expand. And when a state sees its borders as endlessly expandable, it often leaves behind a trail of graves.
That was a great video. Shout out to Middle East Eye. They're a good channel to go check out, honestly speaking. Let's get back into it.
Three of the most senior members of Iran's government have been killed by Israeli forces in targeted attacks over the past 2 days. Intelligence Minister Ismail Khatib is the latest senior official to be killed in an Israeli strike overnight. He previously worked in the office of the former Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. On Tuesday, Iran's security chief Ali Larijani was killed in an Israeli attack
we covered
in Tehran.
that already.
Larijani was appointed Secretary of the Supreme National Council last year and recently said the US-Israeli war set the heart of the Iranian nation ablaze. And Gholam Reza Soleimani, the commander of Iran's internal security unit, was also killed by Israeli forces on Tuesday. He was sanctioned by the US.
The crazy thing about it, they still have more secessions ready to take their spot already. They probably already filled their positions already as we speak. Like, the Iranians planned for this years in advance. They've already been planning for this already. So they've already probably picked successions, and allegedly they've already picked successions. They already picked like 7 in total successions to take over each time one person is killed after another. Each time a top Iranian government or military official is killed, there's already someone ready to take up the helm. They're killed, but then their successors already ready in the wings, ready to go ahead and start taking up the job from where the other person left off from. So it doesn't really matter at this point how many are killed, because in order to execute a regime change completely, we have to wipe them all out completely. And right now, intelligence have been already told Trump already, this is statistically impossible. Mathematically, it's not possible without boots on the ground. So the Trump administration is still adamant about putting boots on the ground, even though they're sending like, what, 2,500 Marines to the Middle East right now. Now they say it's not for boots on the ground purpose, but it seems like to me the language is kind of getting lost in transition somewhere, that maybe they are thinking about putting boots on the ground, but Trump is so adamant about probably so scared about doing it just because the general public would not receive it already, because he's still thinking about optics. Even in this regard, optics don't matter no more. The midterms are already lost. What midterms do we even have at this point? Like, there is no midterms. I don't know why he's worrying about optics no more. You started the war. It was already a war that the American people did not even want. They keep having this language of like intercontinental missiles. Iran is like a decade away from that type of technology, according to your own intelligence. We're going to hear that in the testimony of Tulsi Gabbard in just a moment. Bro, it's a war that nobody wants.
European Union and other countries for his suspected role in suppressing dissent in Iran. Back to you, Mohammed Val, in Tehran. The Iranian president confirming in the last hour that the intelligence minister was indeed killed. What impact is this having on the Iranian state and the system?
Well, fully generally speaking, it's a very hard blow on the government here and on the people who support the government. Of course, we have seen with the gathering today, thousands of people paying tribute to those 2 leaders who were killed yesterday. And now we have this new assassination. There is no doubt. Nobody can deny that this is a very challenging situation for the government here and for the country, particularly the segment of the population that still hopes that this government will remain in place during and after this war. But there is also that spirit of defiance among the people, particularly among the leaders, saying that, when the late Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was assassinated, the Americans and the Israelis were betting on that scenario, on that incident alone to lead to the disintegration of the country, or the government, I mean. That didn't happen. And one after the other leaders have been assassinated. And before that, there were many assassinations during the previous war and so on. The leaders here are saying that this is not the way to change the regime in Iran, and it's not going to lead to the results desired by the Americans and the Israelis. As you can hear here, the foreign minister in an exclusive interview with Al Jazeera confirming.
I do not know why the Americans and the Israelis still have not understood this point. The Islamic Republic of Iran has a strong political structure with established political, economic, and social institutions. The presence or absence of a single individual does not affect this structure. Of course, individuals are influential, and each person plays their role, some better, some worse, some less. But what matters is that the political system in Iran is a very solid structure.
We have that interview too. We're going to react to that too as well. So, gotta say, we got a long one.
Gaten B in Doha. We're getting reports that Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG installations have been evacuated here in Qatar. And we're also hearing that sirens have gone off in Saudi. Tell us about what's happening in the region and how seriously this threat by the RIGC is being taken.
Well, the threats are being taken extremely seriously, and we know that because there are reports that Ras Laffan is being evacuated as we speak. This is the largest LNG production facility in the world. It was last attacked on March the 2nd in the early days of this conflict, and after that, Qatar Energy, which owns it, said that they were going to temporarily pause production there because they needed to protect their vital infrastructure and also their workers. Now, this is a reaction to Iran's threat that it will target militarily Qatar's energy infrastructure and also energy infrastructure in the UAE and Saudi. It issued this warning several hours ago, saying that workers and residents in specific areas needed to evacuate to ensure their safety. In the UAE, it's the Al Hassan gas field. In Qatar, it's the petrochemicals complex and Mesaid terminal that is affiliated with Chevron. And in Saudi Arabia, it's the Al Jubail petrochemicals complex. Now, we've had reaction to Iran's threat from the foreign ministry spokesman here in Qatar, Majid Al-Ansari. He said that these threats were dangerous, that they were irresponsible and a threat to global energy security. Meanwhile, Folly, there have been reports in the last few minutes of 2 loud explosions in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, and apparently residents there have got a warning for the first time that there is some kind of threat of an aerial attack.
Okay, thanks for the updates, Victoria. We'll come back to you, of course, when we have more information about what's been happening in the region and Iran's retaliatory attacks.
Qatar intercepts 4 Iranian missiles. One falls in Ras Laffan, causing fire.
But first, let's go to Victoria Gatenby here in Doha, that's Qatar's capital. Victoria, earlier we were speaking, there were evacuations at Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG installations. That's after the Iranian threats, of course. What is the latest on that now?
Yes, in the last 30 minutes or so, we've had a statement from Qatar Energy to say that its Ras Laffan industrial complex has been targeted with missiles. That has caused widespread fires, which they're now having to deal with. And there has been, what it confirms, is extensive damage to that facility. It says its emergency teams were on site immediately. There have been no reports of any injuries and that all workers were safe. Now, that facility, hours ago...
The fact that this all happened in a single day. First, Iran's energy infrastructure was targeted by Israel. Then they go right back around and then they start talking to everyone's energy infrastructure. So they made it very clear. You target us, we're going to target everyone. We're going to make it a very bad day for the entire world right now. And they were not lying. I'm paraphrasing what they said, of course, but like their actions already says it for me. They already made it clear. You target our energy infrastructure, we're going to target everyone's energy infrastructure, including the Israelis, because they tried to bomb Israel's energy infrastructure. I think there was a cluster munition missile that managed to, I think, hit somewhere around where Israel houses energy infrastructure at. I don't know if it struck the facility completely, but it's enough to scare the Israelis of how serious Iran is about retaliating in such aggressive manner. You hit us first. You hit our way of housing where we house our energy at. 70% of our energy infrastructure at, along with Qatar's, we're going to retaliate in a manner that you're not going to like. That wasn't just to Israel. That was just to us too as well. So Iran's made it very clear. This war is like a very serious war, a global war that's going to have repercussions on not just the Middle East. It's going to have repercussions on everybody. We're all fucked in this regard right now. So I don't mean to laugh, but it's like this is just how fucked a dire situation this war has gotten, bro. This war is really getting out of control right now, to the point where energy infrastructures are being targeted right now. So all this happened in one day. One day, this all happened. So we're having reports of people having to shut down the oil productions, energy productions. They having to shut down everything, send everyone home right now for safety reasons, because these facilities, as much as they're trying to protect them, they can't stop all the missiles going through. And if they don't get like a clean hit on the energy or oil productions, they'll at least hit a surrounding area that's close to it. That's going to cause a scare. As you're about to see right now, Saudi is getting very pissed off right now. Qatar is getting very pissed off. They're calling it, everyone's getting very mad right now because this war is getting out of control right now. So this is going to have very, very real global repercussions right now by the end of it.
was evacuated because Iran had said that it would target that facility and 4 more facilities across the GCC region in response to targeted attacks on its gas field. So this is a major development here in Qatar. That plant up in the northeast of the country it's the largest LNG production facility in the world. Qatar itself produces 20% of global LNG production. So this is what Qatar's wealth is built on, and it's now saying that that facility has been extensively damaged by Iranian missiles. We've had a statement in the last few minutes from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It expresses its strong condemnation and denunciation of what it calls the brutal Iranian targeting of Ras Laffan Industrial City, which it says has caused fires that resulted in severe damage to that facility. It goes on to say that Qatar has done its very best to stay out of this war, but the Iranian side, it says, continues its escalatory policies that push the region towards the abyss and plunge countries that are not parties to this crisis into the circle of conflict. So a very serious development here. Obviously, the Iranians put a statement out hours ago that it would also be targeting other facilities in the UAE and also in Saudi Arabia, and those were the Al Hassan gas field in the UAE and the Al Jubail petrochemicals complex in Saudi Arabia and the Samref refinery also in that country.
And Victoria, you're talking about an attack here in Qatar, but the capital, that as regional foreign ministers are due to hold an emergency meeting in Riyadh.
Yeah, that's right. There have been attacks across the GCC today. We've actually just had a raised security alert, threat alert here in Doha. We haven't heard any missiles being intercepted yet, but the threat level here has been raised. Now, in Saudi Arabia, a couple of hours ago, they heard several loud explosions in the capital, Riyadh. Saudi's Ministry of Defense later said that that was them intercepting 4 ballistic missiles that the Iranians had targeted in the Riyadh city's area. Now, debris from those interceptions fell across the Riyadh area, they say, but at the moment, there is no damage to buildings that has been reported and no civilian injuries as a result of those missiles being intercepted. But as you say, it comes as Saudi was hosting Arab leaders from these Gulf countries to try and talk about a coordinated security policy. You would imagine now the focus of those discussions will very much be on the threats that they are facing from the Iranians, with Ras Laffan having been targeted and dealing with the aftermath of those attacks.
All right, thanks very much. That's the latest there from Victoria Gatenby in Qatar.
All right, so let's move on to this one right here. So this one's from Channel 4 News. Iran vows to retaliate over massive Israeli gas field strike.
Of airstrikes here, threats and renewed escalation. Israel targeted the South Pars gas field in the southern Bushehr province. It is shared by Iran and Qatar. It is a significant escalation. Israel also claimed to have killed another of Iran's leaders, Intelligence Minister Ismail Khatib, who was targeted overnight in Tehran. Elsewhere along the Straits of Hormuz, the US says it used deep penetrator bombs to hit Iranian missile sites. In Lebanon, heavy Israeli bombardment flattened buildings in Beirut, while in the south, the IDF ordered those living south of the Zahrani River to move north, including the entire city of Tyre. The IDF said it would also target crossings along the Litani River. Iran continues to fire towards Israel. A suburb of Tel Aviv overnight was hit during a barrage of missiles which included cluster munitions. Blasts and drone interceptions have also been reported in the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, as well as Bahrain. Well, here's how day 19 of this war unfolded. Grainy videos, but a clear escalation. What you're looking at is the largest natural gas field in the world, the backbone of Iran's energy system, going up in flames. The latest conflagration in a region already consumed by fire. Israel's attack on South Pars, apparently made with US blessing, is the first time Iran's energy production facilities have been hit in this war. Iran shares this gas field with Qatar. The destruction instantaneous, the consequences massive. Qatar's response, helpless outrage. Iran's threats against energy facilities across the region. And in the last hour, this attack on Saudi Arabia to prove the point.
As a direct result of this action, the fuel, energy and gas infrastructure of the source of the aggression will be set ablaze and turned to ashes at the first opportunity.
Their backs firmly to the wall, the Islamic Republic is burying its leaders at a relentless pace. Today it was Ali Larijani, the all-powerful security chief, killed yesterday by Israel, along with Gholam-Reza Soleimani, head of the regime's street-level paramilitaries, the Basij. The intelligence minister was also killed overnight. The morning is a message that the Islamic Republic retains a hard core of support. Even for some of its many, many opponents, though, Israel and America's war is a terrifying lurch into the unknown.
Regarding Larijani's death, some people think he could have probably at some point played a role in ending the war. People don't want this war to continue for a long time, especially given the collateral civilian damages and already dire economic situation.
This war is becoming a catalogue of grim firsts. Here's another. Iranian cluster bombs raining down on Tel Aviv. These bomblets get released even when the missile carrying them is intercepted. In this case, the residential neighborhood of Ramat Gan, Eshel Street, corner of Haroe, third floor. The apartment of Yaron and Ilana Moshe, both in their 70s. It seems that they were too old to make it into the shelter, and that was their death sentence. Are you getting more vulnerable now?
We've seen a decrease in the Iranian regime's fire, but we've seen an increase in their attempts to target civilians. We've seen an increase in their willingness to use weapons that are a war crime to be used against civilians.
That's rich coming from them.
Israel prides itself on defined normality, manicures in the mayhem, a trim at the barbers, a breakfast at the neighborhood cafe, and a broad consensus that this war against Iran is necessary.
Did you have to fight this war?
Yeah, it's a necessary war. We have to end it with all the terror and the fighting from Iran.
And people will sit up here and say it's just the government that wants this war. The people want this war too.
In kibbutz Neve Eitan, in 56, I was in the shelter.
And now you're still in the shelter?
Yeah, 70 years, the second all the time, whoa.
Few people think that this will be the last one, and few dare to think what would happen to Israel without the support of its American protector. Presidents can change.
That's right.
But geography
That's
is here
right.
to stay.
Exactly.
Well, as you can imagine, this strike on the gas field in Iran is having a huge effect on the global energy markets. More on this, our economics editor, Helia Ebrahimi, is with me now. Helia, how has all this played out in markets today?
Well, Kathy, as Matt was just saying, Pars is the biggest gas field in the world, and after the attack, the price of oil immediately shot up 5%, touching almost $110 a barrel. The price of European gas also immediately was impacted. You can see shooting up, that sharp tick up, 6%. But it's not just oil and gas. This feeds into fertilizer, petrochemicals, foodstuffs, inflation, and I picked out just one example, corn prices, because corn needs nitrogen, which needs gas, and you can see after the attack it just shoots up. Now there are farmers out in Iowa and all over the American heartland right now, Kathy, choosing whether to plant corn, which needs gas, or soybeans, which doesn't, and that matters because if they plant less corn, that is going to constrict supply, which is going to push up inflation later in the year.
It was just today. So why is this gas field so important?
Listen, I don't think you can underestimate how politically and financially important it is. It's set in the middle of the Persian Gulf, owned half by Iran and Qatar. It's estimated that there's 1,800 trillion cubic feet of gas there. That is more than any other gas field in the world combined. The South field, which was attacked today, is owned by Iran, and most of that is used domestically in homes, in heating, in industrial activity. The North field, owned by Qatar, is basically exported in LNG to Asia, to Europe, but also to the UK, Kathy. But remember, that is offline now.
And we've had the Federal Reserve decision on tax today, haven't we?
Yeah, really critical decision. Last time they met, oil was at $60 a barrel, and now it's almost at $110 a barrel. But they were fairly dovish today. You know, even though they held interest rates and raised inflation expectations slightly, it was the best that Donald Trump could have hoped for. You know, in a world where diesel in the US is about $5 a barrel, which touches a real political nerve in the US.
Helia, thanks very much for joining us. Let's go now to Matt.
Thanks, Kathy. Well, now in the US, the Director of National Intelligence has been testifying before the Senate about the intelligence that prompted the war on Iran. Tulsi Gabbard has said that while the Iranian government has been weakened, Iran...
We're going to watch that one. So...
and its proxies are still a threat to the US and its allies in the Middle East. Let's go over now to Washington and our US editor, Anushka Stein.
So we're going to say that one. Okay, so let's get into this one.
On a beach in Dubai, bystanders hear the now common sound of an Iranian drone's distinctive buzz. Cell phone footage captures it flying low overhead, chased by an Emirati jet.
So this one's from NBC News. How Iran's use of cheap drones is affecting the war.
Don't worry, man. Don't worry. It's gone. Action is over.
It's an Iranian Shahed drone. They're cheap, mass-produced, packed with explosives, and sent on one-way missions. Since the U.S. and Israel launched their first missiles at Iran, Iran has launched hundreds of them in retaliation. An NBC News analysis shows the U.S. and their allies appeared unprepared for the threat of these cheap drones, which are proving highly effective. We verified and examined more than 24 drone strikes captured on video and found that Shahed-style drones have hit a wide range of strategic targets, including U.S. military bases, airports, and energy infrastructure. We spoke to defense policy expert Kelly Grieco about what these videos show.
I think when you look at these Iranian missile and drone attacks, it's easy to think that it is sort of random. It just looks like chaos and an adversary trying to lash out. But when you look at more closely at what they're actually doing and you look at their target set, you can see that it's actually remarkably coherent and it has a clear strategic and operational logic.
The majority of successful strikes confirmed by NBC News are close to the coastline, and that's happening for a reason. Iran is launching Shaheds on short-range flights across water, which makes them harder to detect.
If you are even delayed in your ability to detect it, it reduces the number of options you have in terms of how you might intercept it.
Most Iranian drones are shot down, many even destroyed on the ground before ever getting launched. But videos show that U.S. and allied forces are destroying Shaheds with weapons that are much, much more expensive and harder to replenish. A Shahed drone can be built for just $20,000. In the video from the Dubai beach, the Emirati F-16 fires a missile costing more than $400,000. Shahed-style drones have been around for years. The Ukrainian military uses cheap interceptor drones to destroy incoming Shaheds from Russia, but it took the U.S. a full week after the war started to ask Ukraine for help and expertise. In that time, Iran had already launched hundreds of drones.
We don't have, the cheaper options that we need to try to intercept these things, particularly at scale. And so we have been caught flat-footed in that way. And in many respects, inexcusable, given we've had 4 years to learn from Ukraine.
So now we have low-cost interceptors effectively combating Iranian drones?
Now it's a contest to see which lasts longer, cheap Iranian drones or the not-so-cheap anti-drone defenses.
It takes one party to start a war.
True.
It takes at least 2 parties to end it. Part of the Iranian calculus then is going to be, have we driven the cost up enough to make sure that this doesn't happen again? What it's trying to do is cause disruption. It's an indirect approach. It can't militarily defeat its adversary, but it can try to break its political will and make it exceedingly costly for a war to continue.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated
Yeah,
on
that
breaking
was
news
a
and
good
top
one.
stories on the NBC News app
That was
or
a good
watch live
one.
on our YouTube channel.
All right, so this is America's War. Iran Foreign Minister Arachi. So this one's the interview the foreign minister did with Al Jazeera.
Mr. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, thanks for talking to Al Jazeera. Shukran. The first issue today is the announcement that they've assassinated Iran's Supreme National Security Council, Mr. Ali Larijani.
I do not know why the Americans and the Israelis still have not understood this point. The Islamic Republic of Iran has a strong political structure with established political, economic, and social institutions. The presence or absence of a single individual does not affect this structure. Of course, individuals are influential, and each person plays their role, some better, some worse, some less. But what matters is that the political system in Iran is a very solid structure. We have not had anyone more important than the leader himself, and even the leader was martyred. Yet the system continued to work and immediately provided a replacement. If anyone else is martyred, it will be the same. If the foreign minister were ever to be martyred, there would ultimately be someone else to take the position.
Aren't you afraid that you might be one of the targets?
Anyone could become a target. In recent days, we have seen that they have no hesitation about targeting any place. So far, 53 hospitals have been attacked, along with many schools. The Minab school, which has now become well known, where 168 students were killed, is the most famous example. But there have been others as well. Bank branches and many residential buildings have also been attacked. Political figures, civilians, scientists, and university professors have all been targeted. It is even possible that the foreign minister could be attacked. But like everyone else, we are standing firm and working for the goals and interests of our country, and we have no hesitation about giving our lives for it if necessary.
You are in the middle of a war, and it's an American-Israeli war on Iran. At the same time, Iran is in a wider war. It's launching rockets towards Israel, towards American bases, and also towards neighboring countries.
We did not expand the war. The war is inherently expansive. This is a point we had already warned our friends in the region about for a very simple reason. When the United States attacks us, our armed forces, our missiles, and our drones cannot reach U.S. territory. Therefore, we are inevitably compelled to respond by striking U.S. military bases in the region and attacking U.S. military assets in the region. Unfortunately, these assets are spread across the entire region and regrettably are located on the territory of our friendly countries.
Because we're gonna push for time, I'm just gonna go say that one. Probably say that one for tomorrow's stream. We'll finish that one off. We're at 3:34, so we're gonna save that one for when I react to Tucker Carlson's interview with Joe Kent. I'll do that one along with Benjamin Netanyahu's press conference too as well. But for right now, we're gonna move on to Saudi's foreign minister says Kingdom reserves right to take military action against Iran.
الإسلامية على أعلى درجات التشاور والتنسيق في سبيل استعادة أمن المنطقة واستقرارها وحفظ مصالحها ورخاء شعوبها.
This consulting decision which informs the desire of all Arab and Islamic countries to coordinate at the highest level in order to maintain stability and prosperity of its people and security. In this meeting, we have agreed to condemn the egregious attacks of Iran against Saudi Arabia and GCC countries and a number of Arab and Islamic countries, and the determination of the Iranian regime to destabilize the region in breach of international laws and threatening the international peace and security. We have warned over and over again of such escalatory measures to spare the region such circumstances and to resort to peaceful approaches. However, Iran's insistence on violating good neighborhood principles, and therefore we have stressed the need for Iran to stop its aggressions and to condemn Iran's attempt to escape blame for such attacks and its human and physical losses. Iran has preemptively planned for the attacks that we have witnessed today, and this is an extension of a established history of supporting militias and supporting its stooges to destabilize the region. aggression against neighboring countries is a violation of conventions and laws and against the principles of the Islamic faith. And this doesn't serve nor contribute to the Islamic unity, but rather undermines the same. The countries today have stressed that Iran needs to review its decisions. Its continued attacks against our countries would serve it no good, but rather would have adverse implications that would cost Iran high political price and would increase its isolation. And we have called for an unprecedented consolidation. 136 countries, members of the United Nations, and to stress the United Nations resolution that asks Iran to stop its aggressions immediately against neighboring countries. We have also stressed that they need to implement the resolution immediately and to cease and desist from supporting its proxies in the region. And we have discussed the importance of protecting shipping and waterways. And we have condemned Iran's attack on against shipping in the region and closing the Strait of Hormuz and the implications on international trade, and that attacks on shipping is a threat to international trade. That this requires a collective action to ensure security of the Strait of Hormuz. The attacks on sources of energy that impacts the international economy and the developing countries and the most needy countries. Collaboration and intense coordination between our nations will continue in light of the developments in order to frame joint stances and to take necessary actions to protect the stability and security of our nations and calling for a broad regional and international action. Thank you.
Of course, the Saudi foreign minister would take the. I'm not gonna say. Look, obviously they're in bed with us, and I've been on paper saying that Saudi Arabia is one of our greatest allies because we do get a lot from their oil. Their oil is like the second richest oil in the world, right after Venezuela's oil, who now we've have access to. Saudi Arabia is good allies to us. They work well with us. We've pretty much westernized their country. They've taken very much inspiration from places like Las Vegas, of course, and you see what they've done with their country and made it more hospitable to foreigners. And they are very much in the pocket of the United States. So that goes without saying that, of course, they will sit up here and tell Iran they need to cease and desist from supporting proxies in the region, whose only purpose for existing is to deal with Israel. The proxies only are in existence is because of the Israeli state. Nothing else. They have no other reason to be in existence. They have no other reason to be fighting. So the Saudis know this, but instead the Saudis chose to side with the Israelis. And because they side with the Israelis, they're going to be against Iran in this regard. Now, I'm not sitting up here saying I'm in favor of Iran. No, I'm just anti-Israel. That's my position on it. We don't get no benefit from funding them, nor do we get any benefit for being allies with them besides just getting into more and more endless wars. Every war we fought in the Middle East has been for the purpose of Israel. This war right here with Iran, you can't even hide the fact that this was for Israel. At least with Bush, he had 9/11. At least with any other president, at least back then, on any other president, they've had a reason to go to war. You know, weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein wants to take over the Middle East, to conquer it, to keep the United States out from having interest in the Middle East. They've had better reasons to go to war for. With this one, it's very bluntly clear that this war is for the purpose of Israel. Nothing else. So I'm not surprised in hearing these Saudi's foreign minister go out here and say that Israel needs to stop funding their proxies from doing terrorist acts in the region. Well, of course, I don't agree with their actions at all. Very much, I do not agree with their actions. But what I don't agree with is occupation of people that don't really have a right to exist. In the case of the Palestinians, as the Israelis might sit up here and tell you, especially coming from some of their biggest propagandists that go out there and do the media work for them, that the Palestinians have never lived any better besides just being under the control of the Israelis, which that is not true at all. The Israelis occupied and pretty much militarily control the Palestinians' way of life there on the Gaza Strip. These people don't have a right to their own determination. As a matter of fact, before Israel came there, it was known as the British occupied it might have been saying something else. Excuse me. Well, let me continue my monologue. British occupied Palestine. That's what it originally was called before the Zionists came there, took control, and then pretty much led to a couple of military genocidal issues over the years, mainly the Nakba that happened, to where a lot of Palestinians were thrown out of their own households, displaced, and murdered basically by the Israelis. So that led to a lot of global issues that happened there at the time. But of course, no one really stepped in to really help them, because at the time we were cucked. Well, we still are cucked to the lobby that runs our politics to this day. So the Zionists fought pretty much. They've snuck their way and also forcefully taken power over time to where Israel became what it is today, was a country at the expense of a indigenous people that were already there. And now they're militarily occupied by this people that for the most part, most of them didn't even originate from the Middle East. Yes, they have the DNA to back up that they are the Jews, but some of them weren't even born there. Most of their lineages, because they're Ashkenazi, they're born from Europe. In essence, they're not European per se, but they're from Europe. So they came there at the expense of the indigenous people, took over militarily. Then now they're occupying the people. Now, since then, they've built up a strong relationship with the United States over time. And now to the point where the United States has negotiated or militarily forced other countries to come to the negotiating table to basically accept Israel because of the Abrahamic Accords. And now countries like Saudi Arabia is like cucked to Israel ever since then. So they basically don't even have their own thought process in the matter, because now they have to basically be pro-Israel because Saudi Arabia is in bed with us. So it's not surprising hearing Saudi's foreign minister say this on camera. We all know they're in bed with us, and simultaneously we're at the whim of Israel. We don't really pretty much have a choice in this regard. So that's that.
عبد الرويز قناة الإخبارية السعودية.
عبد الرويز على الإخبارية السعودية. How do you comment on Iran's political discourse, especially in light of the attack against Riyadh during your meeting with ballistic missiles? Answer. Thank you for the question. Actually, our comment is that it's clear that the Iranians didn't understand the message, and they don't want to understand the message. They continue to attack their neighbors, their brothers, and they are while they're calling for Islamic solidarity. How do they expect Islamic solidarity and support while they attack Islamic countries? They hamper their interests. They target their civilians. How could they call for diplomatic solutions while they attack nations that have no relationship to the ongoing conflict? All of this is an indication that Iran.
You guys do house military U.S. bases on your land. So technically speaking, that's why Iran's made it clear. They told the United States this was going to happen. So this is was kind of self-explanatory in itself, that they warned the United States that they would do this stuff. If this war came, instead of looking for a diplomatic solution, the United States, Israel, along with the United States, decided to choose military action instead of choosing diplomacy. That's what happened.
Has always regarded its neighbors not based on principles of brotherhood, nor with a sincere desire to coexist and
Let's
to
skip ahead a little
develop,
bit.
but rather.
And if the time comes, the leadership of the kingdom will take the necessary decision. We will not shy away from protecting our country and our economic resources.
I'll give them credit. They've been very patient about not attacking or not getting involved just yet. So I don't know how long that's going to hold up, but they've been very much on reserve right now.
The main point here is that the Iranians continue to target economic resources and continue to attack the livelihoods of ordinary Saudis. You know, when I see an attack today, 2 refineries in Riyadh were attacked. What's the purpose of that? What possible military purpose can you have for attacking a refinery in a non-combatant? So the Iranians will have to understand that this has consequences.
عبد الرحمن العصيمي من قناة العربية.
Iranian officials keep saying that their attacks against GCC countries are directed at American military bases. However, reality says contrary to that. How do you raise such a contradictory statements by the Iranian officials towards GCC countries? My second question, in terms of diplomacy, would Saudi Arabia go any further? Would Saudi Arabia approach or resort to Security Council or other organizations? Answer: such contradiction is nothing new. This is the historic challenge in the relationship with such a regime in Iran. In the past, when we would talk to them about supporting armed groups, they would deny it. When they talk to them about their support to the Houthis in Yemen, they would deny it. When we talk with them about some actions in the kingdom, they deny it. So they are used to committing a crime and then denying it. This, I believe, the entire world can see the lies that there is no denying the ballistics missiles that target civilian properties.
So they made it clear right now, if Iran keeps attacking them, they are going to militarily most likely strike back. So that's that. Let's get into this one right here.
Amman, Tehran and Doha. Let's begin with Victoria Gatenby here in the Qatari capital. Victoria, so we heard in that press conference after Gulf Arab foreign ministers met in Riyadh. What's the Saudi foreign minister's message then to Iran, do you think?
Well, the most significant thing that he said in that meeting was that Iran needed to reconsider its course, these attacks needed to stop, or he said that they would review their actions because political options are on the table as well as non-political options. Now, that's hugely significant because GCC countries have been saying for the past 2 weeks that they want de-escalation, they want dialogue. They've been at pains to stress that this is not their war to fight and that their posture is very much one of defense, not offense. So the fact that now the Saudi foreign minister is talking about non-political options being on the table is very significant. He went on to say that Iran's actions would backfire politically and morally. He talked about the fact that he felt that Iran attacking Riyadh and also Qatar, the Ras Laffan industrial complex in Qatar, while this diplomatic meeting was ongoing in Riyadh, was an attempt for the Iranians to blackmail Arab and Islamic countries. He said they would not be blackmailed, they would not be intimidated. And he also said that they were very clear that there would be non-political options on the table.
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia's foreign minister saying that they wouldn't shy away from a military response, his words, but they would take a diplomatic track at the UN before that. I mean, are we now poised at a much more perilous moment here, Victoria?
I mean, obviously, in the last few hours, the events of the last few hours have escalated things significantly. The attack on Ras Laffan in the last few hours has been a significant escalation, with Qatar Energy saying that that facility in the north of Doha had been attacked with missiles. That facility, there are massive fires at that facility, which they're now trying to contain. They say that all personnel are accounted for. There haven't been any injuries, but that is very significant. So, yes, I think this is a very significant moment.
Yeah, as you say, Qatar had also ordered some Iranian officials to leave the country in response to that attack on the Ras Laffan gas facility that you're just talking about. Clearly, a very strong response from the Qataris, Victoria.
Yeah, so in the last few hours, the Foreign Ministry has issued a statement saying that they feel that Iran is dragging this region into the abyss. They have strongly condemned and denounced this attack on Ras Laffan energy facility. Now, this is a very significant energy facility for Qatar, but not only for Qatar, for the region and the wider world in terms of gas supplies. Ras Laffan energy complex is the largest one in the world in terms of liquefied natural gas production. Qatar itself produces 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, and Europe is very dependent on those gas supplies. So depending on the extent of the damage at that facility, this could have implications not only for Qatar, not only for the region, but for the wider world. And those implications could be for months or for years ahead.
All right, Victoria Gatenby there in Doha. Victoria, thank you. Let's cross to Ali Hashmi, joins us live from Tehran. Ali, so Saudi Arabia's foreign minister warning in that press conference that they would not shy away from taking military action against Iran if they have to. How is Iran likely to perceive that statement, do you think?
Well, this is a turning point. We get back to square one in the Saudi-Iranian relationships, actually in Gulf Iranian relationships. In the past few years, there was this agreement between Saudi Arabia and Iran under the auspices of China. Now, with these events unfolding and the latest attacks, it seems that Saudi Arabia isn't giving to Iran the last ultimatum. However, it's giving them a kind of an advanced warning that whatever comes next will have dire implications. And I think the Saudi position today complements the Qatari position when they designated several Iranian diplomats as persona non grata. However, how would this be received in Tehran? In Tehran, and actually yesterday when we spoke to the foreign minister, and we told him, I told him directly that these actions are turning friends into enemies. He said, well, we care more about our people and defending our people's lives. And that he feels sorry for the damage, but at the end, this is, to Iran, this is a war that they have to fight. Now, I think from the Iranian point of view, there's nothing much that they are going to do, because there is a decision on the top of the system, on the top of the establishment, to continue in this attitude. And it's not going to stop. However, when there is a situation where military action is taken, then I think that things are going to be more and more complicated in this war that's taking day after day new and new dimensions.
Yeah, in terms of Iran's war planning going forward, Ali, will Iran now have to factor in a possible military response from Gulf states? I mean, that seems to be the message from Saudi Arabia.
Well, they've been accusing some states in the Gulf without naming them. At least they named Bahrain, that there were some rockets launched from there. However, now if things are going to take this, I mean, if it's going to be a new turn in this war, then Iran will have to face a bigger coalition. Now, regardless how these things are going to happen and whether they are going to happen or not, probably most of the countries in the region are doing and exerting efforts in order to reach an end to this situation that the United States and Israel started with the war on Iran. But yeah, for Iran, the options are limited right now, and they might have to face dire consequences.
Yeah, and just to go back to the point you made, Ali, some Iranian diplomats being expelled from here in Qatar after that attack on the Ras Laffan gas complex. How will Iran be viewing this move by Qatar, and how is that likely then to affect any sort of diplomatic efforts to end the war?
You know, despite all what's been happening, connections between Iran and Qatar hasn't stopped. At least this is what has been said. Now, this move is a gradual move. The Qataris are not directly ending relationship. For example, the Emirates, United Arab Emirates, severed relations with Iran. And now the Emirati embassy here in Tehran has no one there, and there's no flag anymore. For Qatar now, it's just designating diplomats, and mainly the military attaché and the security attaché. But this is a step, and this is a signal. How the Iranians are going to respond to this signal, actually, it's unpredictable. Iranians now aren't the same Iranians of last month. They are now unpredictable, and we cannot really analyze or think the probabilities of their actions.
Yeah, Ali, meanwhile, another senior Iranian official has been killed, the intelligence minister. What impact is this likely to have on Iran's ability to plan and execute the war going forward?
Well, Darren, this is the third security official that's been killed in the past 48 hours. Before him, Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, then the commander of the Basij, Mr. Soleimani, Ghulam Reza Soleimani, and yesterday it was announced that Ismail Khatib was killed. Now, these assassinations by Israel are huge symbolic hits and blows to Tehran. But when it comes to the day-to-day business, that's not going to have that big impact, because this is a very bureaucratic state, and there are several layers in each institution. They are presiding institutions. The Security Council is an institution. The Basij is an institution. The Ministry of Intelligence is an institution. And all of them are multi-layered, and they have several circles within them. So for day-to-day issues and plans, I don't think this is going to have a huge impact. But on the symbolic side, yes, it's going to have. And if the replacements of these officials are being assassinated too, this is going to be also a bigger challenge, given the fact that we know now that Mr. Khatib was killed at his house, so he wasn't taking even precautions. The head of the intelligence ministry wasn't taking precautions. And Mr. Ali Larijani was assassinated at a known house where he's known to go there, and one of his bodyguards had a phone. At least these are the reports we are hearing. So there is also a gap here. There is a security gap. It seems there is a lack of security protocol, or at least some of the officials are not adhering to the security protocol in the country.
All right, Ali Hashim, live for us there in Tehran. Ali, thank you.
Definitely a miscalculation on their part.
Analyst and joins us live now from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Khalid, so Gulf State Foreign Ministers were meeting in Riyadh. The Saudi foreign minister there talking. He had some very strong words for Iran and said that Riyadh wouldn't shy away from a military response if they have to. How dangerous is the current escalation, do you think?
Well, very dangerous, because for the first time ever, I hear during a meeting of this magnitude Iran would attack, or any country would attack such a meeting that includes so many countries. This is a message that we don't care, that whatever you do, whatever you say, we don't care. We want to bring it down, everyone. We want to burn it all. So everyone will care about what is happening to us. This is childish, and unfortunately, this is what is happening today.
The Foreign Minister was at pains to point out, though, that Saudi Arabia would exhaust all diplomatic options before it would consider a military response, though.
Yes, that's him, but that's not me. I'm very angry as a Saudi for what happened, and I appreciate that what he's doing is trying not to get us engaged in such a war that we are not involved in or considered or consulted in the first place. We know it's not right, but we know it's dangerous. We tried our best in Saudi Arabia, in the Gulf region, and all the cool heads in the region tried to stop this from happening, and Iran knows it because they used us to send messages to America. They used Oman to help them negotiate. They used everyone. But at the end, they start by attacking us. Threefold what they attacked Israel itself and America. How cowardice is this? How crazy is this? I can't understand. I couldn't expect this to happen. I mean, in the first war, the 12 days war, this didn't happen. And I understand that maybe because of what happened the first day, all the cool heads, all the intelligent people in Iran are now underground. And that's what's happening when the Al-Haras al-Thawri, the revolutionary guards, are taking over. Because they don't think, they just push the buttons.
Yeah, Khalid, and we saw Qatar expel a number of Iranian diplomats following that attack on its Ras Laffan gas facility earlier today. How will Saudi Arabia be viewing Qatar's response and the diplomatic fallout these attacks are causing?
Well, I didn't hear any response from officials. But if you are asking me, I think Qatar knew something about these people in particular because they didn't send everybody backing out in 24 hours. Only these two people and their staff. Maybe they found something like the Kuwaitis found before in Kuwait. And the Bahrainis found that Iran has sleeping cells inside these countries, and they activated before the war. So they planned this. They planned all that's happening today when there was a leadership. So now what is happening today is the autopilot of whatever that leadership gave them to act upon. And no matter what you say or what you do, as long as the buttons in the hands of these maniacs, that's what they expect.
Yeah, I can hear the anger in your voice, Khalid. I mean, Saudi Arabia continues to be attacked by an increasing number of Iranian missiles and drones. What's the broader public mood inside Saudi Arabia at the moment? I mean, these attacks are unprecedented.
Well, if you think I am angry, wait until you hear from them. Everybody is angry and disappointed and shocked. Iran is talking about Islam and raising the flag of Arab issues and Muslims. But look what are they doing. They started with us, not with Israel, not with America, because they are maybe too afraid to go there, or maybe because they hate us more than they hate the Jews and the Americans. I can't understand how can you be a Muslim and
what the fuck? That's a stupid thing to really say.
When you are not really a Muslim.
Khalid, let me get a final point from you. I mean, we've seen Iran expand this war.
You guys technically sold out to the Israelis. I mean, technically speaking, you'd be like, you're siding with the literal people that literally hate your guts. You guys are sitting up here sucking off the cocks of the Jews right now. How are you going to sit up here and call yourselves pretty Muslim right now when you're sucking the cock of the Jews right now, bro? That's crazy. That's crazy. He even said that.
Horizontally by attacking Gulf states, including Saudi Arabia, where you are, and their energy facilities, presumably to put pressure on the U.S.
And it's funny because the Jews were let in safely, especially the Sephardics or whatever, allowed the Jews to come in under the Ottoman Empire. They had safety under the Ottomans compared to any other society they've been in. That's crazy. That's crazy.
When this is over, Khalid, what sort of relationship do you think will emerge between Iran and its Arab neighbors? I mean, that relationship is now permanently damaged, isn't it?
Yes, it is damaged with this regime, but we don't know who is coming after this regime. If it's the same regime, you can see that they don't think, cannot be held to any agreement or to any promise. I mean, after Pekin, we thought we had an agreement with them, and suddenly they just did like Hitler did. I mean, they turned against the same people they signed.
Nigga said just turn like Hitler did, bro. It's like these guys had some it's crazy like how the Hezbollah talking points is really went off into the Saudis now. The Saudis are repeating Hezbollah talking points.
Agreement with like Hitler turned against Russia and against all the Europeans, and they did exactly that. So that's crazy. For us, the same. But if a new regime came and it's rational and it has better people than these people that you can negotiate with, you can take word with, I think trust can be built, but it will take time.
All right, Khalid Batafi, you have to leave it there. Khalid Batafi, political analyst, joining us there from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Many thanks for your time.
That's crazy. So do a documentary right here, Gulf Power Struggle, the Cold War of Three Princes. We'll probably get into that. But right now, it is time to react to two national security officials and their testimonies. We have to react to the two long ones. Probably skim through the most important parts right now. We're probably not going to watch the entirety of both because they're both like 2 hours fucking long. So what I'm going to do is I'm about to get up and take a piss right quick, and I'll be right back. And then we're going to jump right into this right now. So don't go anywhere. We're friend to jump into this right now. Make sure you like the video, get your popcorn, whatever. About to watch the entirety. Well, not the entirety. We're going to skim through all the important stuff. So. All right. Got ourselves a long one. Let's jump into it. There's Tulsi Gabbard right there, along with Kash Patel and John Ratcliffe. So let's jump ahead a little bit to the start of this thing.
I'd first like to take this opportunity to commend the thousands. Good morning. I call this hearing to order. Welcome to the Senate's annual Worldwide Threat Assessment hearing. Let me begin by welcoming our esteemed panel of witnesses, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, the CIA Director, John Ratcliffe, the FBI Director, Kash Patel, the Acting Director of the National Security Agency and Commander of U.S. Cyber Command, Lieutenant General William Hartman, and the DIE Director, Lieutenant General James Adams. Thank you all for your appearance today and for your service. I also want to offer a special thanks to General Hartman, who is about to enter a well-earned and well-deserved retirement. General, on behalf of the committee, thank you for your lifetime of service to our nation. I'd first like to take this opportunity to commend the thousands of men and women in our intelligence agencies whom our witnesses represent. Our intelligence professionals are second to none. Because of their service, their dedication, and their sacrifice, Americans are safer at home and around the world. But because of the nature of their work, grateful Americans don't buy their lunch at restaurants or even have a chance to say thank you. So on their behalf, let me simply say thank you. I want to make two basic points this morning. First, the world is always a dangerous place, especially for America. But thanks to your agencies and President Trump's leadership, the world isn't quite as dangerous for Americans as it was a year ago. Thanks to the efforts of our military and intelligence personnel, including my fellow Arkansans who are now serving in the Middle East, the Iranian revolutionary regime that terrorized the world for 47 years is finally knocked on its back foot. Last summer, we devastated Iran's nuclear facilities. In recent weeks, we've eliminated Iran's top leadership, pummeled its military, sunk its navy, destroyed its missiles, neutered its proxies, and left its economy reeling. After 47 years of indecision and timidity, America has finally put our foot down. I'm also pleased to report that things have improved a lot in our own backyard now that Venezuela's illegitimate communist dictator, Nicolas Maduro, is rotting in a New York prison. Only the United States could execute a military and intelligence operation of this difficulty without a single American life lost. Our military is awesome, but these operations wouldn't have succeeded, and they probably wouldn't have even been tried without timely, accurate, and fact-based intelligence from your agencies. These successful operations are a testament to our intelligence professionals' ability to expose and uncover critical details about America's enemies. So let this be a warning to those who wish America harm. We leave no stone unturned, and there's no one or no thing close to you that might not betray you. Today's hearing is an opportunity for the American people to hear an unvarnished and unbiased account of the remaining threats we face. From communist China, North Korea, and Russia to the east, to narco-terrorist cartels here at home, these threats truly do span the globe. And for my second point, your agencies have improved over the last year thanks to reforms that has gotten them back to basics. Of course, my 2 points are related. When our intelligence agencies return to their core mission, stealing the secrets of our adversaries to deliver timely and needful intelligence, America is safer for it. These efforts are already bearing fruit. For example, last year, the CIA increased its foreign intelligence reporting by 25%. This year, the CIA is on track to hire and deploy more officers than at any point in the last quarter century. While I'm greatly encouraged by the progress, more remains to be done. We must always equip our intelligence personnel with the tools they need to do their jobs well and execute their missions. That's why I fully support President Trump's request for a clean reauthorization of FISA Section 702. And it's why I expect a healthy intelligence budget request in the administration's supplemental appropriations request to fund operations against Iran and narco-terrorists. No doubt our military needs supplemental funding, but our intelligence agencies need it just as badly. Moreover, I urge each of you to...
All right, let's skip ahead a little bit.
Let me also join you, Mr. Chairman, and begin by thanking literally the tens of thousands of men and women across America's intelligence community who work every day to keep our country safe. Their work is by necessity secret. That is the nature of intelligence. But that is also why hearings like this one matter so much. Over the past year, we have seen a series of developments that raise serious concerns about the erosion of safeguards that protect both our democracy and our security. And nowhere is that more worrying than when it comes to the integrity of our elections. For decades now, our intelligence community has warned that foreign adversaries, including Russia, China, and Iran, are actively seeking to shape the outcome of American elections. These efforts have included cyber intrusions, disinformation campaigns, and covert influence operations designed to divide Americans and undermine our confidence in our democratic institutions. Protecting our elections from these threats should be one of the intelligence community's highest priorities. The DNI is supposed to be coordinating intelligence on foreign election interference, warning the American people about adversaries seeking to undermine our democracy. Ensuring that federal,
at least 101 ways the Trump administration has made Americans less safe. That's crazy.
The creation of a foreign malign
that's
influence
actually pretty funny.
Inside the office of the DNI to coordinate the intelligence community's response to foreign election interference and ensure that these threats are properly shared across the government. That is the mission Congress assigned to the DNI. But while foreign adversaries are actively probing our democratic institutions, the DNI has eliminated the Foreign Malign Influence Center and does not have a designated official coordinating the response to election threats. And for months, the committee has repeatedly requested briefings from the IC, briefings that are required by law on legitimate foreign threats to the midterms. We have received no response. Now, that silence, I believe, should concern every member of the committee, because it clearly demonstrates the DNI is not interested in protecting American democracy by combating foreign influence. Instead, unfortunately, we have seen the DNI involve herself in purely domestic matters. Last month, we saw Director Gabbard personally participate in a law enforcement raid to seize election ballots and voting machine records in Fulton County, Georgia, a raid tied to an election that the president lost 6 years ago. When the warrant supporting the raid was unsealed, it showed something deeply troubling. There was no foreign connection to justify the involvement of our nation's top spy. Instead, the predicate for the warrant was a slop of debunked conspiracy theories that had already been rejected repeatedly by courts, by independent investigators, and even by Georgia's own Republican Secretary of State. Yet the nation's top intelligence official was personally involved in this operation. This raises one very serious question. If the intelligence community is not being deployed to mobilize against foreign threats, why is it being deployed at all on a domestic issue? The DNI's appearance at this raid, as well as her involvement in seizing voting machines from Puerto Rico, suggests something that should also alarm every American. I believe an organized effort to misuse her national security powers to interfere in domestic politics. and potentially provide a pretext for the president's unconstitutional efforts to seize control of the upcoming elections. Now, don't take my word for it. The president has repeatedly pushed for the nationalization of our elections, calling for federal government to override the state election laws and, quote, take over voting while continuing to make false statements about election fraud. And we have heard troubling rhetoric from senior officials that reinforce these concerns. As former Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said publicly, we've been, and this is a quote, we've been proactive trying to make sure we have the right people voting, electing the right leaders to lead this country. At the same time, the administration has brought into government individuals promoting conspiracy theories about our elections. The so-called White House Director of Election Security and Integrity, Kurt Olson, played a key role in efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Now, Mr. Olson holds a position inside the federal government.
Let's skip ahead a little bit to
refer
the
criminal investigations and access our most sensitive.
Good morning. I'm here today to present the 2026 Annual Threat Assessment, joined by the directors of the CIA, FBI, DIA, and NSA. Before I continue, on behalf of the intelligence community, I want to extend our thanks to General Hartman for his 37 years of service in uniform and closing out his 37 years with tremendous leadership of the NSA. This briefing is being provided in accordance with ODNI statutory responsibility. I'd like to remind those who are watching what I am briefing here today conveys the intelligence community's assessment of the threats facing U.S. citizens, our homeland, and our interests, not my personal views or opinions. In this assessment, we're following the structure of priorities that were laid out in the President's national security strategy, starting with threats to our homeland and then shifting to global risks. The defense of our homeland is of the utmost importance to the American people, and efforts by this administration have shown over the last year the results of bolstering homeland defense in the security of the American people. For example, the strict enforcement of U.S. policies at the U.S.-Mexico border and regionally have served as a deterrent, drastically reducing illegal immigration. Based on Customs and Border Patrol data, January 2026's monthly encounters are down 83.8% compared to January 2025. Encounters declined at 79% compared to 2024. The drivers of migration are likely to continue. Potential worsening instability in countries like Cuba and Haiti risk triggering migration surges, and smugglers who have long operated as transnational criminal organizations continue to view chaos as an opportunity for profit and will continue to look to profit from illegal immigration flows. These transnational criminal organizations continue to pose a daily and direct threat to the health and safety of millions of U.S. citizens, primarily and directly by producing and trafficking in illegal drugs. Under President Trump's leadership, fentanyl overdose deaths have seen a 30% decrease from September 2024 to September 2025. President Trump's aggressive efforts to more directly and actively target these transnational criminal organizations and reduce the inflow of fentanyl precursors has already had a significant impact, which is likely to continue. We've seen fentanyl potency also decrease, likely due to disruptions to the production supply chain. U.S. efforts to work with China and India to halt the flow of fentanyl precursor chemicals to North America are demonstrating some improvement, but there is more work to be done, as sadly, there are still tens of thousands of fentanyl-related deaths in America every year. Mexico-based TCOs like the Sinaloa Cartel and Jalisco New Generation Cartel dominate the production and smuggling of fentanyl, heroin, meth, and cocaine into the United States. Colombia-based DCOs and illegal armed groups like the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and the National Liberation Army are responsible for producing and trafficking large volumes of cocaine to the U.S. and European markets, with now some indicators of attempts to expand their market to the Asia-Pacific region. Colombia remains the world's largest producer of cocaine, and Colombian criminal groups have expanded their trafficking relationships with neighboring Ecuadorian and Brazilian gangs. As you know, MS-13 is well established in cells within the United States and uses violence to intimidate the Salvadoran diaspora, engaging in murder, extortion, retail drug trafficking, firearms offenses, and prostitution, fueling increased violence and instability. These and other TCOs continue to present a very tangible and individualized risk of violent crime to everyday Americans and contribute to regional instability. As the president increases his focus on counter-drug and counter-cartel pressures, they're likely to seek ways to try to adapt their operations, including shifting production locations and trafficking routes and methods. The United States continues to face a complex and evolving threat landscape with a geographically diverse set of Islamist terrorist actors seeking to propagate their ideology globally and harm Americans, even as al-Qaeda and ISIS remain weaker today than they were at their respective peaks. The spread of Islamist ideology, in some cases led by individuals and organizations associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, poses a fundamental threat to freedom and the foundational principles that underpin Western civilization. Islamist groups and individuals use this ideology for recruiting and financial support for terrorist groups and individuals around the world and to advance their political objectives of establishing an Islamist caliphate which governs based on Sharia. There are increasing examples of this in various European countries, and President Trump's designation of certain Muslim Brotherhood chapters as foreign terrorist organizations is a mechanism to secure Americans against this threat. In response to setbacks to their capabilities of conducting large-scale complex attacks, Islamist terrorist groups have shifted toward focusing on executing information operations to spread propaganda and inspire or enable individuals located in or with access to the West. U.S. counterterrorism efforts, primarily in Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, and Syria in 2025, were instrumental in removing key terrorist leaders and operatives, degrading the ability of al-Qaeda and ISIS to quickly reconstitute its leadership and plan large-scale attacks against the homeland and U.S. interests abroad. Strict U.S. border enforcement measures and increased deportations of individuals with suspected links to Islamist terrorists have reduced access to the homeland and removed some potential sources of future terrorist attacks. Since January, U.S. officials have only had a handful of encounters at our borders with individuals associated with terrorist groups. This is a positive trend. However, our interagency coordinated efforts to continue to identify, locate, and remove known or suspected terrorists who may already be in the United States continues with vigilance. In 2025, there were at least 3 Islamist terrorist attacks in the United States. Law enforcement disrupted at least 15 U.S.-based Islamist terrorist plotters. Roughly half of last year's disrupted plotters had some online contact with Islamist terrorists inspired by Islamist foreign terrorist organizations abroad. For example, in the recent attempt to attack a synagogue in Michigan, the shooter had familial ties to a Hezbollah leader. Al-Qaeda and ISIS pose the biggest threat to U.S. interests overseas in parts of Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia.
They said that he had family in Lebanon, according to a article. I forgot from what news outlet, but one news outlet reported that that attack at that synagogue in Michigan by that Lebanese U.S.-born citizen, apparently that guy had family that were in Lebanon or being targeted by Israel. That was his motivation for attacking that synagogue.
Where these groups operate. In the Middle East, AQAP in Yemen, ISIS-K in South Asia, and ISIS in Syria are among the most likely groups conducting external plotting. ISIS in Syria is likely seeking to rebuild its ranks, expand support networks, and solicit funds by re-engaging with and recruiting from the likely hundreds of ISIS detainees and thousands of ISIS-linked women and children who were either released or escaped from prisons and displaced person camps that were previously run by the Syrian Democratic Forces in northeast Syria. Meanwhile, state actors present a risk broader in scope by seeking new capabilities in kinetic and cyber warfare. The United States' secure nuclear deterrent continues to ensure safety in the homeland against strategic threats. However, the intelligence community assesses that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced, or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range. The IC assesses that threats to the homeland will expand collectively to more than 16,000 missiles by 2035, from the current assessed figure of more than 3,000 missiles.
Wasn't saying that
the IC
before.
assesses that China and Russia are developing advanced delivery systems meant to be capable of penetrating or bypassing U.S. missile defenses. North Korea's ICBMs can already reach U.S. soil, and the IC assesses that it is committed to expanding its nuclear arsenal. Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile development potentially could include ICBMs with a range capable of striking the homeland. The IC assesses that Iran has previously demonstrated space launch and other technology it could use to begin to develop a militarily viable ICBM before 2035, should Tehran attempt to pursue that capability. However, these assessments will clearly be updated as the full impact of Operation Epic Fury's devastating strikes on Iran's missile production facilities, stockpiles, and launch capabilities is determined. These nations collectively will likely seek to understand U.S. plans for advanced missile defense for the homeland, probably for the purpose of shaping their own missile development programs and assessing U.S. intentions regarding deterrence. Shifting to the cyber domain, the IC assesses that China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and non-state ransomware groups will continue to seek to compromise U.S. government and private sector networks, as well as critical infrastructure, to collect intelligence, create options for future disruption, and for financial gain. The IC assesses that China and Russia present the most persistent and active threats and are continuing their R&D efforts. North Korea's cyber program is sophisticated and agile. In 2025 alone, North Korea's...
I'm going to play the open testimony for the first one, but for the second one, we're just going to skip ahead to the grilling portion of the committee hearing, because it's not really that important for the second time go around, because they're just going to say the same thing.
Cryptocurrency heist probably stole $2 billion, which the IC assesses is helping to fund the regime and include further development of its strategic weapons programs. Financially or ideologically motivated non-state actors are becoming more bold, with ransomware groups shifting to faster, high-volume attacks that are harder to identify and mitigate. Innovation in the field of artificial intelligence will likely accelerate these threats in the cyber domain. The IC assesses that it will increasingly shape cyber operations, with both cyber operators and defenders using these tools to improve their speed and effectiveness. For example, in August of 2025, cyber actors used an AI tool to conduct a data extortion operation against international government, healthcare, and public health emergency service sectors, as well as religious institutions. Moving to the Arctic, the IC assesses that Russia, and to a lesser extent China, aim to strengthen their presence in the region through increased maritime trade, natural resource extraction, and military activity. Russia, which has the longest coastline in the Arctic, has long sought recognition of its polar great power status and is deploying more military forces and building new permanent infrastructure. China, though not an Arctic country, is engaged in more limited efforts in the region to advance its own strategic and economic interests. The IC assesses that China is the most capable competitor in the field of artificial intelligence. The IC assesses that AI capabilities are rapidly advancing and changing the threat landscape. As this is a defining technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning comprehension, problem solving, creativity, and autonomy, it will be critical to ensure that humans remain in control of how AI is used and of the machines that may threaten to autonomously violate the interests of the American people across all domains. AI adoption at scale across the spectrum of usage poses serious risks. AI has the potential to aid in weapons and systems design and has been used in recent conflicts to influence targeting and streamline decision-making, underscoring the risk and likely threats that could manifest on the battlefield. Early developers in quantum computers will give countries an extraordinary technological advantage over others to quickly process national security information and break current encryption methodology used to protect sensitive finance, healthcare, and
the Iranians impacting key areas in areas where they're protecting.
Thank you, General Adams. I was recently in Camden with Secretary Hegseth as part of his Arsenal of Freedom tour, and they are great Arkansans to do great work to keep our nation safe. General Hartman, we've often spoken about our pressing need for more cybersecurity manpower and part-time formation, such as the Arkansas Air National Guard's 223rd Cyberspace Operations Squadron, are a great way to grow the force. What recommendations do you have to grow these cyber protection teams and develop more capacity for local and national missions?
Chairman Cotton, thanks for the question. I did hear a little bit about the great team in Arkansas there, and I know 855 CPT operates from that formation. And so for us, certainly looking at a number of different initiatives. One, ensure that we can share all of the relevant top secret classified information and other sort of indications and warning that the organizations need. But I will tell you, I'm an advocate for an ability to establish some sort of joint reserve cyber organization, and so that at Cybercom we can ensure that those organizations have all of the advanced training that they need to ensure that those organizations have access to all of the intelligence that they need, and to ensure that we control some level of funding at both Cybercom and NSA that can be used to mobilize those personnel to handle the most difficult problems that we're faced with. And we have been working with Congress on some of that language and the department, and we appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, General Hartman. As I said in my opening, we only have this one public hearing a year, even though the committee hears from each of you several times throughout the year in classified settings, so we don't often have a chance to tell the American people what great work their intelligence professionals are doing for them. So Director Ratcliffe, could you take the opportunity to maybe join in the excellent briefings that Secretary Hegseth and General Kane have provided on a regular basis over the last couple months on the military aspects of both the Maduro raid and Operation Epic Fury to explain the CIA's contributions to those operations?
Thank you, Senator. You know, last year when I was here in my confirmation, I promised you all, and you had all asked for, a more aggressive CIA, one that was focused on core mission, getting back to the business of stealing secrets, to be able to provide our policymakers with a decisive strategic advantage that would allow.
Key fact: John Ratcliffe is more of like a politician than any of the other ones up there. Honestly speaking, he has more media training than everybody up there. Honestly speaking, so that's why he's a little bit more better. You're gonna see when he gets grilled a couple of times in both these hearings that he knows how to far better deal with the grillings. So when he's getting grilled, he just knows how to maneuver around and answer questions in certain ways to where he's not technically not answering the question. It's kind of like you kind of literally pick up on this trait once you've been in politics as long as John Ratcliffe has been.
And advance and contribute to foreign policy and national security successes. To the credit of the CIA workforce, the CIA has delivered. Some of those successes have been very public. As you mentioned, Senator, Operation Midnight Hammer, Operation Absolute Resolve, flawless military operations like that are hostage to a flawless intelligence picture. And the CIA, as you know from classified briefings, contributed in myriad ways to the success of that. But what I would say to you is those successes are just emblematic of the phenomenal progress and success really by every measure, every metric, every standard across every national security space with regard to the work of the CIA. Senator, you mentioned some of it in your opening. The increase of our asset stable and our human sources up by 25%, our FI collection across the board, our foreign intelligence collection up by 25% overall, and in important categories like China, for instance, up 100%. In areas like tech and AI, up 45%. On the counter-narcotics front, our operations up by 70%. And with regard to counterterrorism, those are classified numbers that I'll share with you in the classified portion of this hearing, but they're off the charts good. The best way I can summarize it, Senator, is I had a 32-year veteran of the agency retired this year, and he said to me, I hate to go. I don't know if this is the best year that the CIA's ever had, but it's the best year I can ever remember. And I think that reflects the current morale of the CIA. It's a workforce that knows it's doing a great job. It knows that it's being allowed to do what they signed up to do, which is provide that decisive strategic advantage to our country for great successes that everyone can see. So I thank you for the opportunity to let me recognize the CIA workforce.
Thank you. Director Ratcliffe, I want to address one specific threat from Iran, the threat of an intercontinental missile, which is really just the combination of two technologies, one thrust to get something into space and a reentry vehicle to get it back to Earth. Iran has always had a space launch program, which is flimsy cover for the first part of that intercontinental missile program. I haven't seen any Iranian astronauts in space lately. And second, they have medium-range ballistic missiles, which already have a reentry vehicle. So if you crudely married those two technologies together, I've heard some analysts say that Iran could have had a functioning intercontinental missile to threaten the United States in as few as 6 months. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, you're right to be concerned about Iran's development of longer-range ballistic missiles, Senator. If Iran were allowed to develop at the IRBM ranges, which is
3,000 kilometers. It would threaten most of Europe. And yes, as you mentioned, we know that Iran is gaining experience in these larger
assessments have said, like real actual political assessments have said that Iran, the closest that there be to an intercontinental ballistic missile would be a decade away. That's just, I don't know where he's getting that from. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know why people are harboring on that. Like they're like months away from an intercontinental ballistic missile. If they truly were that close, they would have just built one by now. Hell, they would have built a nuclear bomb by now to kind of quell this problem of even dealing with a war right now. So people, these guys harbor on that notion that if they wanted to build an intercontinental ballistic missile, they would have already done so. Yeah, but at the same time, if they really wanted to build that technology, if they had the technology, they would have been done it by now. They would have been done it by now. They would have not even wait on that. So, and the fact is, they don't see any strategic benefit from attacking the United States directly. There is no benefit from doing it. Like, if you have to really analyze it, there's no benefit from attacking the United States directly.
More powerful booster technologies through its so-called Space Launch Vehicle program. If left unimpeded, yes, Senator, they would have the ability to range missiles to the continental U.S. It's one of the reasons why degrading Iran's missile production capabilities that is taking place right now in Operation Epic Fury is so important to our national security.
Thank you, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, the whole country knows that you were recently involved in an FBI operation to seize ballots in Fulton County, Georgia.
All right, let's get to the grilling.
Despite the fact that the warrant showed no foreign interference or nexus. As a matter of fact, the warrant was based entirely on conspiracy theories that have already been examined and rejected repeatedly. Now, where is the authority for you to involve yourself in a domestic law enforcement activity?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I appreciate the question. As you know, I've addressed every issue you've raised in detail in a letter, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it in this forum. As you stated, Congress provided by statute, ODNI, with the responsibility of election security and counterintelligence. In 2021. As you also know, ODNI has purview and oversight.
I know the history very well, but could you just
I'm addressing the question. ODNI also has purview and overview over two domestic related agencies, the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, both of which have purview over election security responsibilities to ensure the integrity of our elections. I want to correct one of your statements that you've made multiple times, which is false. I did not participate in a law enforcement activity, nor would I, because that does not exist within my authorities.
You were present on the scene. Are the photos of you on the scene?
I was at Fulton County, sir, at the request of the president, and to work with the FBI to observe this action that had long been awaited. I was not aware of what was in the warrant or was not in the warrant.
What was the president's specific request?
What was the specific
request that was made by the president for you to show up in Fulton County?
To go and observe the FBI's activities on this issue.
So why?
And the grilling begins.
Do you have the answer why the president was knowing about this affidavit before it was even served?
I'm not aware that the president knew about an affidavit before it was served.
Then why was he sending you to Fulton County?
This occurred the day that the FBI had it approved, their warrant approved by a local judge, and they began to execute this. To address your question, sir, about the foreign nexus question, in order for us to better understand the vulnerabilities in our election systems that may exist today as we look to 2026, and yes, we are very focused on trying to make sure that this election is one that the American people have faith.
I've got a number of questions. Director Gabbard, I have a number of questions. Let me ask my next question, please. You have not provided any of the required reports or briefings to this committee on foreign interference. This is the first threat assessment since 2017 that didn't even mention foreign interference. Last year, when you were already confirmed, it mentioned it at high level. Are you saying there is no foreign threat to our elections in the midterms this year?
As I stated in the outset of my remarks, this year's annual threat assessment matches the prioritization of threats. And
please answer the question, yes or no. Is there foreign threat interference to our elections this year? Are there foreign?
Please allow me to answer the question, sir. The intelligence community has been and continues to remain focused on any collection and intelligence products that show a potential foreign threat for those who are.
So far, there has been none then because you've made no reports. Excuse me, ma'am. If you want to ask the questions, you should have stayed in Congress. Please answer the questions.
I didn't ask you a question, sir. I'm trying to answer your questions.
So you're saying the failure to provide any reports or the failure to have any mention of a foreign threat assessment, I would draw the conclusion there must be no foreign threat to our elections in 26. So that brings me a question that I have for both you, ma'am, and Director Patel. There are reports that in 2020, the president was preparing an executive order to potentially seize ballots or bring in federal forces. There is a published report that there is a similar EO being drafted right now about 2026, citing China. Director Patel, do you have any knowledge of that draft EO?
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I do not, sir.
Director Gabbard, do you have any?
I do not.
Thank you. Let me move to Iran. Now, I understand, and I appreciated Dr. Gabbard's comments yesterday about agreeing that the president has sole authority, I guess, in his bones to declare whether something is an imminent threat. I didn't agree with your friend, Mr. Kent, but I agreed with him yesterday on the fact that there was no imminent threat. I guess what I'm concerned about, one thing is, even in your printed testimony today on page 6, and your last paragraph on page 6, as a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated. There's been no effort to try to rebuild their enrichment capability. You omitted that paragraph from your oral opening. Was that because the president said there was an imminent threat 2 weeks?
No, sir, I recognize that the time was running long, and I skipped through some of the portions
You chose to
my oral delivered remarks.
You chose to omit the parts that contradict the president. The president continues to say as well that he had no idea, was shocked that the Iranians had moved to take over the Strait of Hormuz. Did you provide any intelligence that would say that it would be that it was not likely that the Iranians would try to move on the strait?
I'm not aware of those remarks, and I think those of us here at the table can point to the fact that historically the Iranians have always threatened to leverage their control.
Why would the president say he was amazed?
I'm not aware of those remarks.
What about the comments the president made that he was surprised again, reports that Iran struck the adjacent Gulf states?
Again, I'm not aware of those remarks. We have continued to provide.
Did you brief the president? Did you brief the president? Did you brief the president if he starts a war of choice, that the likely result would be that Iran would strike adjacent Gulf nations and close the Strait of Hormuz? Did you brief him on those two facts that I think have been consistently the assumptions of the intelligence community?
I have not and won't divulge internal conversations. I will say that those of us within the intelligence community continue to provide the president with all of the best objective intelligence available to inform his decisions.
Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, you just testified that ISIS and al-Qaeda are significantly weaker. And reflecting that view, you have devoted declining
Holy shit,
budgets,
that woman is
personnel,
very old, bro.
and
She's shaking and
emphasis
everything while
on
she's
countering
talking.
terrorism. Yet the fact is that ISIS is growing and operating in Somalia, Afghanistan, Syria, Pakistan, and Iraq. Al-Qaeda is surging in Afghanistan, the
But they have
Arabian
nothing to do with
Peninsula,
Iran.
And throughout Central
They have nothing to do with
Africa.
Iran,
the
though.
Houthis in Yemen and the rest of the Iranian proxies remain a serious threat. Focusing, as you have done, on great power competitors seems to have diverted resources from the fight against terrorism, a fight that's very much still going on. As I have said repeatedly, it is terrorists who want and can kill Americans today. We've just seen the terrorists in Michigan attacking the synagogue. In addition, it appears that a more stovepiped effort in the Intelligence Committee.
That's not my
has
video
returned.
shaking. She's just shaking.
How are you ensuring that Americans are safe and that you are countering counterterrorism threats to our homeland and to U.S. citizens abroad?
Thank you, Senator Collins, for your question and the opportunity to clarify the comments in my opening statement. My reference to the size of ISIS and al-Qaeda organizationally is smaller and weaker than it was during its peak over a decade ago. However, I completely concur with your remarks about the threat of ISIS, al-Qaeda, and other Islamist terrorist groups around the world and the threat that they pose to U.S. interest service members and directly to the homeland. Our ODNI National Counterterrorism Center has been at the forefront of ramping up and I believe is more active today than it has been certainly in a long time. We are dedicating every resource that they ask for, as well as the counterterrorism elements across the IC, to make sure that we are never taking our eye off of this persistent threat to the American people. The change in tactics based on the current environment is something we continue to be most concerned about. Where increasingly we are seeing less indicators of large-scale organized complex threats or attacks, and instead efforts focused on individuals either who have been radicalized by Islamist propaganda and may not have ever had contact with ISIS or al-Qaeda, for example, and others who have had contact, of which we are able to have more indications of. This remains and will be, and as we come to present our budgets to you, a foremost and primary priority. The integration across the intelligence community on the counterterrorism threat occurs every single day, with our teams working very effectively together to thwart terrorist attacks as we have over the last year.
Director Patel, I'm going to follow up on this issue with you. ISIS targets potential recruits online through social media, gaming platforms, encrypted messaging apps. ISIS even facilitated a network online to smuggle illegal immigrants into the United States. Since April 2021, there have been more than 52 jihadist-inspired cases across 30 states. What measures is the FBI taking to prevent foreign terrorist organizations from recruiting or influencing Americans, while also ensuring the protection of individuals' right to privacy?
Thank you, Senator. And I think you said it best. They have transferred their capabilities in terms of personal recruitments to online recruitments, which makes any terrorist organization, including ISIS, all the more powerful. What we have done is extended and expanded resources to environments like the Threat Screening Center, which allows us to collect biometric capabilities from all over the world. We've had a double-digit increase in that and a double-digit increase in intelligence production. But what we've also done in the CT space specifically is expand the number of agents and intel analysts that go online and detect based on our biometric capabilities and intelligence that we have from the interagency. And what that leads us to is what we saw in December of last year, Senator, where we at the FBI stopped 4 terrorist attacks, 4 in California, Texas, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, 3 of which were ISIS-inspired. We were able to detect these individuals both online and in person using our covert platforms, and we shuttered a bombing campaign in Southern California and 2 mass casualty events for New Year's Eve.
Director Gabbard, the intelligence community did not detect an extremely serious breach affecting our telecommunications industry due to the Chinese Salt Typhoon incursions for a very long time. In addition, the Chinese Volt Typhoon threat poses a terrible threat to U.S. critical infrastructure. Specific sectors throughout the United States have been overlooked and underprotected. What are you doing to deal with the threat to critical infrastructure, our electric grid, our communication systems, given this huge miss by our talented intelligence community?
Thank you, Senator Collins, for the question. Working with our partners at NSA and others to detect these threats and how they may be evolved or developing is something we're continuing to work on. Building strong partnerships with the private sector, whether it be in the telecom industry, the financial sector, the healthcare sector, the energy sector, is something that I'm rebuilding. We've seen some of these ongoing relationships falter over previous years. I've personally been astounded by some of the conversations I've had with leaders from these industries who are just as concerned as we are about these threats to our critical infrastructure, and yet don't feel that they have the connectivity or the information to be able to secure their own infrastructure. So in short, building those stronger partnerships, integrating and being able to share information intelligence where we can is critical for us to be able to secure our country from these threats.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Wyden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Gabbard, last year your agencies testified, and I quote, Iran's large conventional forces are capable of inflicting substantial damage to an attacker, executing regional strikes, and disrupting shipping, particularly energy supplies, through the Strait of Hormuz.
Not gonna lie, that purple tie is kind of busting a little bit.
In other words, every problem we're seeing now was not only foreseeable, but was actually predicted by the intelligence agencies. So, Director, in the lead up to the start of this war 3 weeks ago, did the intelligence agencies stick to their assessment that in response to an attack, the Iranians had the capability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz?
Thank you, Senator Wyden. The intelligence community has continued to provide the president and his team with the intelligence related to this operation in Iran before and on an ongoing basis.
So right now, we're in a global energy crisis. We're paying more for gas. The economy is in danger. And it seems to me, and I heard you discuss this with Senator Warner too, that there's a lot of hedging going on with respect to entirely foreseen consequences of the war. And that strikes me, Madam Director, as what amounts to a historic mistake. Now, my second question is, did the intelligence agencies assess that the Iranians could respond to a regime change attack from us by attacking U.S. forces and other Americans in the region?
The IC assessment has always taken very seriously the threat of the Iranian regime's missile capabilities and how our American troops within the region may be put at risk.
Again, it seems to me, with Americans dying in the war, it's hard to see how you can sit here and say that the intelligence agencies couldn't provide a clear warning that if attacked, the Iranians would respond by attacking our people. Now, on Monday, Madam Director, Donald Trump was asked about Iranian strikes on the Gulf states. He said, and I quote, no, the greatest experts, nobody thought they were going to hit the Gulf states. You all are supposed to be the greatest experts. That's what we have you there for. Director Gabbard, did the intelligence agencies assess that Iran could conduct strikes on our own partners in the region if it was attacked?
The intelligence community has continued to assess the potential threats to the region, the existing threats to the region, and providing those assessments to the policymakers and decision makers.
Let me move on to several others of you with respect to 702 of FISA, and I'm just going to start with you, General Hartman. When Congress last reauthorized Section 702 of FISA, it included a provision that expanded the type of companies and individuals who could be forced to assist the government in its spying. Has this expansion resulted in any intelligence, General Hartman?
Senator, thanks for the question. Just to be clear, this provision provided us an ability to collect foreign intelligence on personnel outside of the United States.
What is the major 702 issue in terms of expansion? What was the effect of what was done?
Senator, I would prefer to talk to you about exact specifics in the closed session.
I'm happy to do that. Let's understand, though, this is a dangerously broad provision that could be used to rope in anybody with access to a cable box, a Wi-Fi router, or a server. It was jammed into the 2024 reauthorization bill at the last minute. Senators were told they had no choice but to support it. And now, 2 years later, we've just had testimony from a very respected individual who's saying, so far it has had no value So colleagues, we are getting ready to have another discussion on this, and this ought to be a warning to every senator that not every new spying power that is sold as urgent and critical actually is.
Senator, could I please respond to that?
Of course.
So Senator, I just want to be clear. It provided us no additional authority that doesn't involve collecting intelligence on foreigners that are outside of the United States of America.
Fine.
All right.
Director
So
Patel,
let's
a
skip
question for
ahead
you.
right quick, right here.
I want to ask you, Director Ratcliffe, yesterday, the head of the National Counterterrorism Center resigned, saying that Iran did not represent an imminent threat to the United States. Is there anything to indicate that Iran had ceased in its nuclear ambitions or in its desire to continue to build ballistic missiles capable of threatening American troops and allies in the Middle East?
Senator, no. In fact, the intelligence reflects the contrary.
So you disagree with Mr. Kent?
I do.
I would think any fair-minded assessment of the situation, even based on open sources, would reflect the danger the regime poses to the United States. Isn't it true they've basically been at war with the West since 1979 during the Iranian Revolution and have American blood on their hands?
That's absolutely
Of
correct.
course.
I think Iran has been a constant threat to the United States for an extended period of time and posed an immediate threat at this time.
The threat assessment says that al-Qaeda and ISIS maintain the intent to launch operations targeting the U.S., but it's most likely to occur through U.S.-based lone offenders. I want to ask you, Director Patel, it seems like there's been a raft of incidents recently. On March the 1st in Austin, Texas, where I live, a lone gunman wearing a sweatshirt saying "Property of Allah," and who the T-shirt he wore underneath had an Iranian flag, killed 3 innocent people and injured 12 more. And then we know in Virginia, the Old Dominion shooting, somebody who unbelievably was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison for attempting to support ISIS, but then was released only to commit another terrorist attack. We all are familiar with what's happened in Michigan, in New York, and I applaud the important role that the FBI has played in stopping some terrorist attacks, but obviously the FBI can't be everywhere all the time. Would you please talk about your cooperation and collaboration with Homeland Security investigations in countering terrorist attacks against the United States?
Thank you, Senator. Absolutely. It is essential that the FBI cooperates with the entire interagency. But as to your question about DHS specifically, what we have stood up around the country are 59 Homeland Security task forces in 59 separate locations.
These are joint terrorism task forces?
Essentially, the JTTF model was expanded. So the FBI owns 56 joint terrorism task forces in each of our field offices. On top of that, we have 59 HSTFs, which are co-led by the FBI and DHS. And what that allows us to do is things like we did down in New Orleans just over the holiday period, where we surged for a 6-week period of time and where we dropped the murder rate by double-digit points. And also, it was the first time that Mardi Gras in its entire history had not one homicide. So when you bring the powers of the Homeland Security folks, DHS, and the FBI together, this is the purpose of it, to get after not just the terrorism threat, but the violence and the criminal activity in our cities. And that's why we're in 59 cities across the country, and it's working in places like Memphis and every other city we have it.
Are you aware of the fact that Homeland Security investigation is a major directorate within Immigration and Customs Enforcement?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And are you aware that Senate Democrats have uniformly voted not to fund the Department of Homeland Security, including Homeland Security investigations, TSA, FEMA, and other functions of the Department of Homeland Security?
Senator, I'm aware that employees of DHS are 1 month without pay.
They're not being paid, right?
Yes, sir.
All right,
And
so
we're
let's
all
get
seeing
to
what's happening at airports where people...
Okay, here we go.
With the conduct of ICE as separately. So inexplicably to me, that bill was blocked by my Republican colleagues. It would have, as I say, fully funded TSA, FEMA, as a Coast Guard, and then focused the attention on the situation with ICE. So I just want to be clear on who's blocking funding for those 4 agencies.
Skip ahead a little bit, y'all.
Our security interest for Ukraine to be successful in defeating the Russian invasion. I'm concerned with the consequences of Operation Epic Fury on that ability of Ukraine to succeed in defending its borders. And General Adams, in broad terms, not necessarily not classified terms, what are the consequences to the supply chain, to the capability of the United States to supply NATO allies and Ukraine as a result of Operation Epic Fury? My question is that usual problem of how do we do both? Are we doing both? Is U.S. support maintained?
We don't need to keep supporting Ukraine, bro.
As a result,
we're spending so much money there
Senator,
for a
thank you
losing
for that
war.
question, and we do continue to, beyond Epic Fury, observe what is happening across the world in crises like Russia and Ukraine. Unfortunately for the situation there now, just based on the force composition and the delta between the Russian forces and the Ukrainian forces, the advantage is to the Russians. As we get into the classified hearing, we can talk a little more specifically about the items with regards to supply chain and with regards to the information that the Defense Intelligence Agency collects. We look at the foreign threat and what their capabilities are from a multi-int perspective. We look a little bit less at friendly capabilities. Now, I would defer questions with regards to U.S. supply chain limitations with regards to logistics and the effort that the Secretary of War is having with regards to trying to boost the U.S. defense industrial base. I would defer those to the department to discuss.
Well, General, please be prepared for the classified session for me to continue to pursue this. I mean, our supply chain issues are not classified in the sense that every hearing I'm in as a defense appropriator has officials from the Department of Defense testifying about the need for further assistance. And really, I'm asking for the facts of what has happened as a result of Operation Fury, Epic Fury, in the last few weeks in our supply to Ukraine and our NATO allies who are supplying Ukraine.
Yes, sir. The department is executing a comprehensive, in fact, the SecWar has gone around the nation to boost the defense industrial base. We know for a fact that we have to increase our defense industrial base capability. Its impact based on the munitions expended during Epic Fury will be an impact, but we need to boost it. The efforts are underway to boost it. And
well, I'm interested in helping accomplish that goal. Director Ratcliffe, perhaps along the same line, I assume let me first of all compliment you on your public service. I appreciate you. And that's not my usual town hall meeting when I get a compliment from somebody who then follows it with a but. I am interested in being of help. And in regard to your conversations in preparation for Epic Fury, I'd be interested in knowing if the consequences to our abilities to defend the United States against Russia or China or other adversaries was taken into account. How is that diminished or increased by Operation Epic Fury? And particularly in this instance about what it means, was the conversation had about what it means to our ability to help Ukraine defend itself? U.S. support for Ukraine includes military and other assistance, but also we've undertaken economic sanctions against Russia for their invasion of Ukraine. And Epic Fury has caused a significant increase in oil prices, and the administration has waived sanctions against Russian oil companies, which are reported to say that Russia is receiving $150 million per day additional dollars as a result of the waiver. What can you tell me about our plans or your understanding of what's transpiring as a result of Operation Epic Fury in regard to those oil revenues that are now being generated in favor of Russia and the lifting of the sanctions, at least for a temporary period of time?
Senator, thanks for the compliment, I think. I'll start with a couple things. What I would tell you is the same military and intelligence professionals who delivered, not just for the administration, but for the American people, a flawless intelligence picture and flawless military operations in Operation Midnight Hammer and Operation Absolute Resolve are the same folks involved with Operation Epic Fury. And so I hope that provides you some measure of comfort with regard to how detailed, how thoughtful the approach was to the current operation. And that's why I think that to mischaracterize it as it is being done in the media is a disservice to the folks involved in what is a very specific campaign that is different than the two that I mentioned before. It's why the president came out and said, this isn't over in a matter of hours. This is a 4 to 6 week campaign, and that it would come at some cost because the goal of the president and the administration is to address a 47-year problem, the most destabilizing force in the Middle East for the last 47 years, one that has frankly been watered, fed, and nurtured by policies of prior administrations that has allowed them to become the threat that they have. So I say all of that sort of in context to understanding that we have to address that, but at the same time, to your point on what's going on with regard to Russia and Ukraine, and you mentioned the oil issue. Sometimes policymakers have to take steps that, while they may benefit adversaries like Russia or China, do so because they also think it will benefit U.S. citizens, and in this case with respect to keeping the economy on track and keeping oil prices low. So what I can tell you is the intelligence is thoughtfully considered, and I think that policymakers have taken that and I'm confident that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, pursue objectives in the Middle East, and provide support with regard to the conflict in Russia and the Russian aggression in Ukraine.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Mr. Director Ratcliffe, you just described the specific campaign that the president is engaged in, the country is engaged in with respect to Iran. I think that the campaign has been one, in my view, without a specific rationale for the American people. 19 days into President Trump's unauthorized war with Iran, and by which I mean there has been no congressional approval, at least 13 American service members are dead and many others are injured. That President Trump has offered no credible justification for an imminent threat, no clear goals, no strategy or timeline. His message keeps changing, I think, in really damaging ways. President Trump said Iran's nuclear facilities had been, quote, totally obliterated in June 2025. But when he launched this latest war, he said we need to eliminate the imminent nuclear threat of those totally obliterated nuclear facilities. President Trump has threatened to seize Iranian oil and demanded our allies reopen the Strait of Hormuz. He said that I'm demanding that these countries come in and protect their own territory because it's their territory. It's the place from which they get their energy. By the way, he wasn't just asking for our allies to protect or to bail them out in the Straits of Hormuz. He was asking China to bail them out in the Straits of Hormuz. And then he said maybe we shouldn't even be here at all because we don't need it. We have a lot of oil. And he said we do not need the help of anyone. President Trump has declared we've won the war. We won it in the first hour. But then he said, we're not leaving until the job is finished. He said that there is practically nothing left to bomb, but then threatened to bomb Iran again, quote, just for fun. I think words that probably have never come out of a military leader in the history of the United States of America. It shouldn't come out of the mouth of a civilian leader. President Trump said he will end the war when I feel it in my bones. And anytime I want to end it, it will end. But, Director, the war is not ending. It is escalating with thousands of U.S. Marines reportedly sailing toward Iran on an unclear mission, a mission that's become less clear over days, not more clear. Our airstrikes wiped out Iran's missiles and supreme leader. Nobody here, and certainly me, is shedding a tear for him. But the Iranian people now live under martial law. And by the way, no surprise to our intelligence agencies that that's the case. And the first of a puppet leader who's chosen by the IRGC. No surprise that to anybody on the Intelligence Committee. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz and is holding the global economy hostage. No surprise to anybody who knows anything about U.S. intelligence. Launching drones at our embassies and military bases. No surprise. The president is surprised. Nobody who has looked at our intelligence is surprised. Iran's nuclear program is damaged, to be sure, but it still has a uranium stockpile. We heard today from the DNI at the very beginning of this conversation that the regime is in place and they are going to rebuild their military capabilities, the ones that we are destroying right now. The question I think is raised, Director, about your specific engagement is whether it will become a perpetual war because what Iran will do is exactly what they have always done, and which the DNI is saying they will do again. In its briefings to the committee, the Intelligence Committee has been clear-eyed about what would happen in the Straits of Hormuz, has been clear-eyed about whether or not our military bases, our embassies, and our personnel in the region would be placed at risk and in harm's way, even though the administration did very little to protect them. I know, Director Radcliffe, that you warned President Trump that if Israel assassinated the supreme leader, the IRGC would replace him with potentially a harder line puppet. In fact, I think what was clear is that the likelihood was that it would be a hard line puppet. Do you disagree with that characterization of the intelligence?
Facts.
To that specific question, what we knew was, first of all, I guess I have to address up front, so much of what you related in there, the difference between political rhetoric versus...
It's not political rhetoric. I'm quoting the President of the United States.
Political rhetoric versus military...
Director,
the difference between that and military and intelligence execution. But here's the most important thing. You mischaracterized this as saying there aren't clearly defined goals. The defined goals are very clear. Degrade and destroy the missile inventory and drone inventory, delay and degrade the military industrial base and factories that produce that, degrade and destroy the IRGC Navy that could control the Strait. These are all defined goals that were set out specifically. The premise of the question is that...
time back, Mr. Chairman, I can't...
John Radcliffe is going on.
He won't answer the question.
One day I give him credit, he is going on.
You're both big boys. You can handle it yourself.
Okay, well, Director, I agree that you are.
Yeah, they're acting like children
what you're saying. And I'm not... My point is not what your characterization of the war is. My point is what the characterization, the commander-in-chief. I'm not asking you anymore, Mr. Director. I'm sorry because I'm out of time because of how you use the time. The complete lack of clarity should matter to everybody. President Trump, most of all, he is the person that got elected on the criticism that we had fought 2 wars in the Middle East that had lasted for 20 years. And now we're hearing the testimony is to get their ballistic missiles, to not even get to the nuclear stuff, we're going to have to be in a perpetual war with Iran. And I don't think that's where the American people are on this. This is a serious threat. This is a serious threat to us and to Israel. The question is how to handle it. And President Trump said, we are not the policemen of the world. He ran on that. And now he's turned us into the world's policeman, into its jury, into its judge, into its executioner. And just because we have the most advanced military in the world, it doesn't mean that we should be in a perpetual war all around the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to maybe follow up a little bit the same line of questioning, but I want to do it in a little bit different manner. I've had the opportunity, like all of the other members on this committee, to see the threats that we discuss regularly in the classified settings. I also, sitting on the Armed Services Committee, have the opportunity to see what our capabilities are and what we have to do in order to respond to those threats. Director Ratcliffe, let me just begin. I think it's been very clear from the beginning that even though there were supposedly diplomatic activities going on, behind the scenes, it was very clear, and I just ask if you would disagree or agree with me on this, it was very clear that Iran, while they were talking, they had no intentions of following through diplomatically with eliminating any of their nuclear aspirations, correct?
Senator, that's correct, and in the classified session, we can go into detail, but you've characterized it right. Diplomatically, they were saying one thing. The intelligence was reflecting quite the contrary.
Okay. Second of all, with regard to the capabilities, earlier in the 12-day war, a lot of their defensive capabilities had been taken out. Their air defenses had been taken out. The use of our aircraft in that area was safer because those defensive capabilities, most of them had been significantly reduced, meaning our young men and women who are flying those aircraft were safer. Is it fair to say that they were rebuilding their defensive capabilities as well at that time?
Yes. So I'll just comment on that. So much is being made. Any characterization that Operation Midnight Hammer was anything but a wild success is wildly inaccurate. As a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, at the time of that, in the preceding 4 years, as is well documented and admitted to by the Iranians, they enriched uranium at least 440 kilograms at 60% for use that could be used for weapons grade to deliver a nuclear weapon. As a result of Operation Midnight Hammer, we sit here today with Iran having exactly the same amount of enriched uranium to 60%, meaning they have been unwilling and incapable of enriching uranium to 60% as a result of Operation Midnight Hammer.
Okay, and let me go on because I think this is an important part of this. You also have to have a way of delivering a weapon. It's fair to say that they have short-term and intermediate-range ballistic missile availability today. Were they building additional short-range and mid-range ballistic missiles?
Yes.
Were they continuing to develop them?
Continuing to develop them and at rates that were alarming.
And what about our ability to respond to those? We have very good defensive capabilities, but it takes time for us to build our defensive capabilities. Were they building their offensive capabilities while they were negotiating with us at a faster rate than we could build defensive capabilities?
Yes.
Were they continuing to work at and deliver additional resources to terrorist organizations that were affiliated with them in the region?
Yes.
So in other words, while they were supposedly diplomatically working with us during that entire time, they were continuing with regard to their nuclear intentions. They were building additional missile systems to deliver or conventional weapon systems to threaten their neighbors. Their defensive capabilities were going to be increased, making our young men and women at risk when at some point in the future we would have to basically go in and clean the mess up. I think there was an opportunity here, and I think the president made the right choice when he decided at this time that simply for our advantage and for the young men and women that have to go in and do this, that this was a safer time, if there ever is such a thing as a safer time, but the right time for our nation to respond to this threat. Is that an appropriate way of putting it, sir?
I agree with that.
Thank you. I think the president made the right choice. It is never a good time for a war, but at some point you've got to look at what your best possibilities are for protecting those young men and women who are in harm's way. Let me move on for just a minute. Director Ratcliffe, let me just ask you this because there's been a discussion, and we've never been able to talk about this in an unclassified setting, and I recognize it's sensitive, but 60 Minutes, there's been a report about Havana syndrome and about individuals who are within the agency and within state departments that have actually had significant illnesses, some attributed, they believe, to outside sources. I don't think we have been able to, in an unclassified setting, at least acknowledge that we take these issues seriously. Is there anything you can share in this unclassified setting to assure the people of the State Department and your agency that this is not something which is being ignored?
Thanks for the question. I appreciate the opportunity to address that. Yes, we have to be careful about what we can say when we go into further detail in the classified session. But this is something that when I became the director, as you're aware, Senator, there are disparate opinions across the IC about what the cause of these AHIs may or may not be.
Otherwise known as Havana syndrome.
Well, Havana syndrome, yeah. And the question of whether or not they could be the result of a directed energy weapon from a foreign adversary. So when you, having been the DNI, understanding the role of the DNI is to coordinate across the IC when there are disparate opinions among agencies, Director Gabbard and I had a conversation where she agreed that she would undertake a comprehensive review of that issue across the IC to make sure that it is getting the attention that it deserves. And I know that she has undertaken that and will be able to brief you in further detail in the classified session.
Thank you. And one last thought, this is only a comment, but to General Hartman, your time in service has been very, very special. Working with you on the Cyber Security Subcommittee of the Armed Services Committee, I commend you for everything you've done. You are truly a hero, and you have served your country very, very well. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today to all of our witnesses. So for more than a decade, the United States has tried to make a pivot to Asia in its national defense strategy in order to confront significant threats from China.
We've tried to, but I mean, we keep getting pulled back into the Middle East. Every time we're trying to go and get from the Middle East and go to Asia, we're always getting pulled back in. For some strange reason, we keep going back to the Middle East and keep fighting more wars in the Middle East. We seem to can never escape the Middle East, no matter how much we try to. We've been in the Middle East for like 4 or 3 decades now. We can't seem to escape it. And our main adversaries don't even live in the Middle East. Well, at least they're in the Middle East, but they're building themselves up by being allies with us. So it's crazy to me.
I know. For years,
We're
administrations
supposed to be focusing on
of both
China,
parties
but
have
we keep
identified China as
focusing
a top
on
threat facing our country and
worthless
look to build
wars in the Middle East.
relationships across Asia and deter Chinese aggression. At the same time, we have bolstered our European allies and asked them to contribute more to their defense to deter Russia. Directors Gabbard and Ratcliffe, would you agree that China and Russia are our primary geopolitical rivals?
Yes.
Director Gabbard.
Yes, they are our primary strategic competitors.
Thank you. Director Ratcliffe?
I would agree with that, although I don't think they're equal in terms of the threats that they pose.
Thank you. So that brings us to the war with Iran. So this has created one of the largest ever supply shocks to the global oil supply, which has sent gas prices skyrocketing for Americans. But not everybody is losing. Directors Gabbard and Ratcliffe, is it accurate that Russia has gained billions of dollars in additional oil revenue due to price spikes as a result of the war and loosened sanctions? Director Gabbard.
That is what has been reported. I defer to the Director of Secretary of Treasury and Energy on that front for details.
Director Ratcliffe.
Yeah, I'm not an economist, not going to try and do those calculations. But as I talked about earlier, sometimes there are decisions made that will benefit adversaries at the same time policymakers think that it will benefit the American people.
It's clear, I think we'd all agree that sanctions were loosened, and that means more money into the coffers of Vladimir Putin. Would you agree that if he has more funding, he is likely to put that to his war effort against Ukraine? Director Gabbard.
I would defer to an actual intelligence assessment on what they would believe his intentions are.
Director Ratcliffe?
Yeah, I wouldn't speculate on that.
Wouldn't speculate? Okay. Okay. And is it accurate that China is continuing to receive preferential oil flows from Iran despite the conflict as Iran allows its own tankers to transit the strait? Director Gabbard? I'm going to go back and forth between the two of you.
There has been some reporting of China, India, and other countries being able to move their tankers through the strait. However, it is unclear the volume or the measure of that.
Okay, so it sounds like it's accurate. Thank you. I'm going to move on. Director Gabbard, you tweeted yesterday that President Trump concluded there was an imminent threat and made a decision to attack Iran after carefully reviewing all of the information before him. I think the country deserves to know what the information was. I'm going to ask a series of questions and just want a yes or no. We don't need any explanation, just yes or no, starting with were you asked, I'm not asking if you did brief this, were you asked to brief on whether Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz?
I'm not going to comment on what the president did or didn't ask me on any topic.
I'm not asking if you briefed it. I'm just asking if there was a request
I understand
by the White House. Director Ratcliffe, were you asked to brief on whether Iran would close the Strait of Hormuz?
The briefings to the president of the White House typically don't come at the request of the White House. So typically when we get intelligence that we want the president to be aware of, the intelligence community brings that to the president.
Did you produce the analysis for the Straits of Hormuz?
There has been and continues to be analysis with respect to that.
Were you asked to brief on how our adversaries and allies would respond to the war in Iran? I imagine I'll get the same answer. So it's just to point out here, it's challenging to forget about actually what was in the brief for a second. We're having a hard time finding out not only if you briefed the president on something, but even if the White House asked if they could be briefed on something or if analysis was produced. So I just want to point out here, this is about 6 days.
Can I comment on that? I go back to the point. It's the same approach that we took to the prior operations, which to your credit, Senator, you have praised the intelligence and military communities in Operation Midnight Hammer and Operation Absolute Resolve. It's the same approach and the same professionals in terms of how they approached this particular operation.
We're trying to figure out if the president knew what the downside was of the Strait of Hormuz being closed. And I'm having a hard time finding out whether the White House asked or whether there was a brief, whether the president knew. Did he know this was going to happen, or did he just disregard it? And I just want to point out something that was released about 6 days ago. This is a fundraising email from the president of the United States. And in this email here, where there's multiple links to donate money, it says, as a national security briefing member, you'll receive my private national security briefings. Director Gabbard or Director Ratcliffe, do you think the public should be able to, supporters of the president should be able to pay and receive his private national security briefings? I assume these are briefings, Director Ratcliffe, that you provide to the president. That is now going to be provided to somebody who makes a
regardless of what that I don't know what that document is. But regardless of what it says,
that was crazy. That's crazy.
But what I'm telling you is that the Hatch Act
so people that donate to the president gets to have national intelligence
this says unfiltered
secrets?
Updates. So, Director Gabbard, do you have any comment on whether unfiltered updates of private national security briefings should be made to individuals that donate to the president?
I'm not familiar with that document. And,
that's crazy,
it's been
bro.
made very public 6 days ago. We'll get you a copy here, because I agree with you, Director Ratcliffe, that the Hatch Act should prohibit this type of conduct. Thank you.
Senator Langford joins us from what I gather is a very exciting confirmation hearing for Senator Mullen.
It is, actually. For all of you, thank you. Thank you for the time that you give to the country to be able to serve, for your families and the sacrifice that you make to be able to do this, and all the professionals who work around you. Please pass on our gratitude to them, because they work incredibly hard and difficult tasks in this. I want to talk about something that's a little closer to home on this. A lot of Oklahomans I talk to, and quite frankly, folks even outside the state on it, when they think about threats, as strange as this may sound to those of us that deal with missiles and ballistics, they think about the threat to their family and to their income and to who they are. And a lot of it is international scammers that are now reaching into the United States to be able to gather data or to be able to steal money from them. AI has accelerated this dramatically. And I know the Worldwide Threats has mentioned this and some of the challenges that we face on it, but the challenge is getting bigger. FBI had noted that in 2024, it was almost $17 billion that was assumed lost to scammers, a lot of those internationals. Some estimates are as high as $50 billion.
I'll skip ahead a little bit. That's not really that important.
Who should be followed, and does that help them consolidate?
This guy's got bro, look at that. He's got a pin of the United States flag and the Ukraine. Oh my gosh, you already know how this is going to go. Let's go.
Support.
Senator, the Iranians are certainly using that as a call to action. The effects of that from an intelligence standpoint remain to be seen.
There is a tradition in Shia, though, to honor martyrs. One of their greatest celebrations is the martyrdom of the grandson of Muhammad. Is that correct?
That's right.
So we might have played into their cultural biases erroneously. General Adams, what conditions do you assess would need to be present to make the regime collapse when necessitates, excuse my voice, unconditional surrender? And can it be done with air power alone?
Senator, we have at the Defense Intelligence Agency put together a number of scenarios coordinated across the IC with.
Skip ahead a little bit.
Senator Ossoff. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Before I ask you a few questions, I want to call everyone's attention again to this fundraising email signed by the president that Senator Kelly mentioned earlier, in which the president of the United States invites his campaign donors to, quote, claim your spot, join now to receive private national security briefings to his political donors, featuring a photo of the president at a dignified transfer ceremony with a flag-draped coffin of an American service member killed in action returning to their family. And the American people need to know that the President of the United States is fundraising for his political campaign and his PAC using images of American service members killed in action, and it's a disgrace.
Wow.
Now, Director Gabbard, I'd like to reground this in your core responsibilities. Under the law, you are responsible for providing national intelligence to the President, correct?
Yes.
And to the heads of executive branch departments and agencies, yes?
Yes.
And to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and senior military commanders?
Across the IC, yes.
And to the Senate and the House and relevant committees, correct?
Yes.
And the law states that the national intelligence you provide to Congress, quote, should be timely, objective, and independent of political considerations, correct?
Yes.
And you noted in your opening statement you're here fulfilling a statutory responsibility and that your testimony, quote, represents the IC's assessment of threats, correct? And that opening statement, as submitted to the committee in advance of this hearing, stated that as a result of last summer's airstrikes, quote, Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated, end quote, correct?
That's right.
And is that in fact the assessment of the intelligence community?
Yes.
So the assessment of the intelligence community is that Iran's nuclear enrichment program was obliterated by last summer's airstrikes?
Yes.
And the opening statement you submitted to the committee last night also stated, quote, there has been no effort since then to try to rebuild their enrichment capability, end quote, correct?
That's right.
And that's the assessment of the intelligence community?
Yes.
The White House stated on March 1st of this year that this war was launched and was, quote, a military campaign to eliminate the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, end quote. That's a statement from the White House. Quote, the imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime. Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was an imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime?
The intelligence community assessed that Iran maintained the intention to rebuild and to continue to grow their nuclear enrichment capability.
Was it the assessment of the intelligence community that there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime, yes or no?
Senator, the only person who can determine what is and is not an imminent threat is the president.
False. This is the worldwide threats hearing where you
Oh,
present to Congress
gosh.
national intelligence.
I wish he didn't
timely,
say
objective,
that.
and
That's actually
independent of
not
political
true.
considerations.
That is
You
your
stated
job,
today
actually,
that
to
the intelligence
assess what
community's
is a threat
assessment
and
is that
what's not a
Iran's
threat.
nuclear enrichment program was obliterated, and that, quote, there had been no efforts since then to try to rebuild their.
That the president cannot really assess what is a threat and what's not a threat without the inference of the intelligence community, unless they accurately assess a threat to not domestic and foreign threats. Intelligence are the only ones that can sit there and assess these issues. The president can't do that without the assessment of his intelligence community. Without the assessment of the intelligence community, a president can't really assess accurately what is a threat, what is not a threat. So to sit up here and say that's the job of the president, no, Tosi, that's your job. Your job is to assess what is a threat. Your job is to accurately analyze threats incoming, either foreign or domestic. And for you to assess that threat, you are to then bring it back to the president so that way he can understand what is actually the threat to our national security. The president can't just accurately do that without having his intelligence community. His intelligence community is the most important part of assessing threats to the United States. That's even crazy that she even said that. That's crazy she said that. It's not at all accurate at all. She knows that too.
Enrichment capability. Was it the intelligence community's assessment that nevertheless, despite this obliteration, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
It is not the intelligence community's responsibility to determine what is and is not an imminent threat.
Okay.
That is up to the president based on a volume of information that he receives.
It is precisely your responsibility to determine what constitutes a threat to the United States. This is the worldwide threats hearing where, as you noted in your opening testimony, quote, you represent the IC's assessment of threats. You are here to represent the IC's assessment of threats. That's a quote from your own opening statement. And so my question is, as you're here to present the IC's assessment of threats, was it the assessment of the intelligence community that, as the White House claimed on March 1st, there was a, quote, imminent nuclear threat posed by the Iranian regime? Yes or no?
Once again, Senator, the intelligence community has provided the inputs that make up this annual threat assessment.
You won't answer the question.
It is the nature of the imminent
He's
threat
not
that
gonna
the
answer the
president
question,
has to
bro.
make that determination based on a collection and volume
You're here
of
to be
information and
timely.
intelligence that he is provided with.
You're here to be timely, objective, and independent of political considerations.
Exactly what I'm doing.
No, you're evading a question because to provide a candid response to the committee would contradict a statement from the White House. Let me ask you about your presence in Fulton County
that would contradict a statement from the president himself. Basically, that would undermine the president. And Tulsi knows she don't want to answer the question because that would basically just undermine what the president said. And undermining the president's not a good look, especially for him. He disagreed with her intelligence report that happened, like what, I think it was last year. She basically gave an intelligence report assessing that Iran was not in a process of making a nuclear weapon. And the president says that's a false intelligence report. So anything she says that's then contradictory of what the president said is undermining the president. That's already something he's not going to like. He already doesn't respect Tulsi Gabbard at all. Because Trump wants to believe that he's right in this metric that the Iranians were building a nuclear weapon or in the process of building a nuclear weapon, which is not even true at all. So.
January 28th of this year. You were present at the FBI's raid on the Fulton County Elections Office on January 28th, correct?
I was present for part of the FBI exercising a warrant approved by a municipal judge.
Yes, and the FBI was there executing that warrant to seize ballots and materials associated with the 2020 election, correct?
Yes.
And are you aware that members of this committee have already opened inquiries into your election-related activities?
Yes.
And are you aware that your general counsel and deputy general counsel have already provided testimony to this committee regarding those activities?
Yes.
On February 2nd, you sent a letter to Senator Warner regarding your presence at the raid. Was that letter accurate?
I don't recall the exact date, but if I sent a letter that had my signature, it was accurate.
You stated in the letter that your presence at the raid was, quote, requested by the president, correct?
Yes.
When did the president request your presence at the raid?
The day of the raid, the warrant execution commencing.
The day of the raid?
Yes.
He called you on the phone?
I'm not going to disclose how the message was delivered, but it was a request from the president's administration to go and help oversee this warrant being executed, along with the deputy director of the FBI.
Is it your role to oversee
the FBI agents who were conducting?
Is it your role to oversee the execution of criminal warrants?
It is my role, based on statute that Congress has passed, to have oversight over election security, to include counterintelligence.
But you said you oversaw the raid, correct? You just testified you oversaw the raid?
Portions of it.
Okay. Did you handle any ballots or election-related materials?
No.
You were inside an FBI evidence truck, correct? You were photographed inside an FBI evidence truck.
It was an empty truck, yes.
The president stated, quote, you looked at votes that wanted to be checked out.
The senator's time is expired.
Did you look at votes as the president?
Senator Ossoff, your time is expired.
You respond
can
for the
have her.
record?
No, she cannot respond because.
No, for the record, will the director please respond for the record to that question?
I'm happy to respond to questions for the record.
Thank you, Director Gabbard.
Thank you. Vice Chairman?
I just want to, I'm not going to go back to this issue. I'm sure we'll address in a closed setting, but I am very disappointed. This is the only one time a year the public gets to hear from you guys in this kind of setting. And the fact that we have repeated public reporting, including a major story in the Wall Street Journal today about China and Russia assisting Iran, which seems obvious and evident, and none of you would confirm that publicly, I think doesn't give the American people the full challenges of this war.
I would add
what I said earlier, that the media is not a classification authority, but certainly sounds like something Russia and China would do, and have done for decades in the past to America.
All right, so that's the end of that one. So let's jump into the second one.
Closed session where such questions can be asked. Second, I want to welcome the audience and inform them that while
So we're going to skip ahead from
I fully support constitutionally protected rights of speech and protest, this is not the time or the place. Any would-be disruptors in the audience who interfere with the committee's business will not be tolerated. For this event, members will have 5 minutes with the witnesses. I ask each of my colleagues to keep both your questions and complete answers from the witnesses within that allotted 5 minutes. Any last-minute questions or responses that can't be completed in time will be submitted for the record. We do expect a vote series at 10 o'clock this morning. The vote will be held open, so we don't plan to recess. We'll
Georgia in the 2020 election.
Thank you for the question, Ranking Member. As you know, over each of the previous elections, there is an ongoing effort by different foreign entities.
Ma'am, it's a very specific question. Is there intelligence in your possession relative to foreign interference in the 2020 elections? Very simple, straightforward question.
We are continuing to look at previous attempts to interfere in our elections and any ongoing threats that may exist for the upcoming elections.
Okay,
she's not going to ask those questions.
The answer to my question is no, that you have no specific intelligence related to foreign meddling in the Georgia election.
We are continuing to look into this matter.
Okay. Director, the ODNI has confirmed on the record that your office took custody of voting machines from Puerto Rico last May. I'm not aware of any previous DNI taking similar actions. Did your office promptly notify the committee about taking custody of Puerto Rico's voting machines?
I don't believe we did. However, this was done at the request of the Puerto Rico AUSA attorney.
It's a yes or no question. The answer, as you have acknowledged, is no. You did not inform the committee about the taking of a territory's voting machines. Is there a specific foreign threat? And I've read the reporting that you were looking for possible foreign threats, but is there a specific foreign threat that drove you to take this action?
There were questions about whether or not there were vulnerabilities that a threat could have taken advantage of, and that was the purpose for their requesting us to look into those vulnerabilities.
Where are those voting machines now?
I believe they are held in a secure facility at ODNI.
Have you or other ODNI officials taken any other state or territory's voting equipment into custody?
Not to my knowledge.
I want to turn on the subject of elections to a paradoxical thing. You will all be aware that the U.S. government is apparently going to grind to a halt. The president is going to sign no more bills. The Senate will spend 2 weeks apparently debating the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act, of course, would make illegal foreigners voting in U.S. elections, which is already illegal. So we are to do no more business because of apparently the existential threat to our democracy associated with foreigners voting in our elections. I am therefore puzzled by the fact that neither the unclassified nor the classified threat assessment makes any reference to risk or danger associated with foreigners voting in our elections. Director Patel, how many non-citizens have been convicted of voting in U.S. elections in the last 10 years?
The conviction stats are with the Department of Justice. I defer to them on that.
You are the director of the FBI. Give me a guess. How many convictions in the last 1 year, 5 year, or 10 year? Ballpark.
I don't have that with me, sir. Again, it's with the department.
You don't have that. Okay. Director Patel, how many active investigations does the FBI have into foreign individuals voting in U.S. elections?
We have a number of investigations, generally speaking, ongoing about individuals across the country.
Yeah, I'm asking for that number.
I don't have that number with me, but I have a number of them.
You have a number of investigations. Okay. Is that number 10,000? Is it closer to 10,000 or closer to 10?
It's probably somewhere in between.
Okay. Will you please provide the committee with that number?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Director Patel, since you don't have the numbers, would it surprise you to know that the Heritage Foundation, which is not exactly the Columbia University Faculty Lounge, found only 77 instances of non-citizen voting in the 24 years between 1999 and 2023, each of which faced investigation by the appropriate authorities. So Heritage has a number of 77 examples in 24 years. Does that number surprise you?
No, because it's low.
I don't understand your answer.
You asked me if I was
Are you disputing that the number is in the range of 77 examples of non-U.S. citizens voting in U.S. elections in a 24-year period?
I just said that number's low.
You think that number is low? Okay. So why, if this is a meaningful issue, do we have no, and I guess I direct this to Director Gabbard, why is there no mention of this thing that will grind the American government to a halt for a 2-week period in the worldwide threats analysis?
This annual threat assessment was shaped around the national security strategy's prioritization of threats to our nation and our nation's interests. There are multiple platforms and venues where there have been and there will be reporting on threats to our foreign threats to our elections.
Go back.
Gentleman yields. Vice Chairman Kelly.
I'd first just like to say, Director Gabbard, you being in Georgia was a part of your duties as DNI to make sure that our elections remain safe, secure, and free from every type of influence. That was why you were there. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Bro, that accent is killing me.
I want to talk about some of the points about the strikes on Iran, the current attacks, Epic Fury. And I would state that not only are there imminent threats for Iran, but there are actual threats. And I've been on the receiving end of those threats. I was in Iraq in 2005, where Iranian-based and manned and equipped units attacked American soldiers, including me, multiple times. I will also tell you I went back in 9 and 10, where EFPs developed by the Iranians struck my soldiers and our equipment. I would tell you the Houthis have continued to strike Saudi Arabia. I will tell you Hamas Hamas and Hezbollah has continued to strike throughout the Middle East. And although we're not in an armed services hearing, we had that yesterday. But I will tell you, because we took out their ballistic missiles and their ability to defend from the air, that Europe is no longer under threat from Iran, who showed they will strike everyone that they can by striking all of their Arab neighbors in Azerbaijan and Turkey and everywhere else. With that being said, Director Ratcliffe, I think the CIA has had a great year in providing intelligence, whether that's in Venezuela, the initial midnight hammer strikes, or also the current strikes in Iran. Can you tell us kind of some of the things the CIA has done over the past year that you're proud of?
Congressman, good to see you again. Thank you for the question. Good to see all of you and be back in the House. I guess I'll start by saying I think you all know there was bipartisan concern when I took over the CIA that our human collection was in a downward spiral and had been for some period of time. And you all wanted a more aggressive CIA, one that was focused on core mission, one that was collecting the kind of intelligence and stealing secrets that would provide a decisive strategic advantage that can contribute to national security and foreign policy successes. I do think that the CIA, I agree with you, has had a great year, and that's a credit to our workforce. So you talked about some of the very public successes like Operation Midnight Hammer and Operation Absolute Resolve, where our agency contributed to a frankly flawless intelligence picture that allowed for flawless military operations. And I want to credit everyone here. There's been bipartisan praise from this committee, even from those of you who may disagree with the underlying policies. But I think those successes are really emblematic of success that the agencies had across the board on all national security matters in all national security spaces. And it's not just an opinion. It's reflected in our statistics. So when we talk about stealing secrets, you need assets and sources on the ground around the world. We're up 25% in that regard just in the past year. Our foreign intelligence reporting, meaning the intelligence that really matters to you as decision makers and the president as commander-in-chief, that's up across the board, 25%. Other categories, specific targets and adversaries like China, it's up 100%. Areas like technology, it's up 100%. Issues like counter-narcotics, our operations are up by 70%. With regard to counterterrorism, those are classified numbers that we'll get into in the classified portion, but those are triple digits. We've accomplished more on the counterterrorism front in the past year than in the prior 4 years combined. Again, really a credit to the CIA workforce. Morale at the agency is high because people are doing the work that they signed up to do, and this administration is calling on them to do more. I would say they are
If I can steal back the final 45 seconds, I have one question for Director Patel. Director Patel, the current shutdown that is caused by us not funding TSA, Border Control, DHS, and all those things, how hard has that made the job of counterintelligence FBI to protect us here in the homeland from threats that came through our borders or internally and already existing in the United States? Director Patel.
Thank you for the question. When it comes specifically to the combination efforts between the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, we have 59 Homeland Security task forces that we have stood up in every single state, and then some, that are co-led by the FBI and HSI. And obviously, having a stopgap in funding is hurting those abilities to go out there and fight crime and pick up violent offenders across the country. Even though the DHS workforce shows up every day, I think they've gone 1 month without a paycheck now. We also have things like our Southern Border Intelligence Center in Tucson, Arizona, that is our hub for intelligence collection operations on foreign terrorist organizations, specifically the narco traffickers down in Mexico.
Thank you. My time's expired.
Mr. Carson's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. The Trump administration has justified this war with Iran as necessary to stop an imminent threat. But the administration has not provided this committee with any intelligence indicating Iran was preparing a nuclear weapon, planning a preemptive attack on the United States, or possess any immediate capability to strike the U.S. homeland. That raises very serious questions about what the analysis of the IC provided before the decision to go to war was made. Directors Gabbard and Ratcliffe, is there any evidence that Iran intended to conduct a preemptive attack on the United States? And I ask this because 13 service members have been killed in Trump's war, including Captain Seth Koval, a husband and a dad from my state of Indiana, and my constituents want answers. So is there any evidence that Iran intended to conduct a preemptive attack on the U.S. prior to beginning this war, yes or no?
Congressman, the answer to this question needs to be reserved for a closed hearing. I will say, however, the intelligence community does provide the assessments of the threats that exist to the president so that he can make that determination within the body of information and intelligence and activities within the region that ultimately he is responsible for. What is an imminent threat? And if there is an imminent threat, what actions need to be taken?
That noise you guys are hearing in the ear is not me.
There's a body of intelligence that we'll be able to cover in the classified portion of this hearing that reflects, that does reflect that in the likely event of a conflict between Iran and Israel, that the U.S. would be immediately attacked, regardless of whether the United States.
Yo, holy chopped, bro. Bruh. I'm telling you, working in politics for some of these women, bro, holy chopped. Oh, look, I'm sorry to get off subject right now, but bruh, that face is, bruh, god damn. Holy shit.
It's stayed out of.
Bruh, this is why women don't need to be in politics. Many reasons, because we don't care about their opinions and the fact that, bruh, come on, man.
That conflict.
Shifting gears to Ranking Member Himes' point, let me read to you from the 2025 Annual Threat Assessment. under your watch last year. Quote, Moscow's malign influence activities will continue for the foreseeable future and will almost certainly increase in sophistication and volume. Moscow probably believes information operations efforts to influence U.S. elections are advantageous, regardless of whether they affect election outcomes. By contrast, this year's threat assessment makes no mention of foreign threats to elections. Meanwhile, the IC has been publicly warning about foreign powers interfering in our elections for nearly a decade. So the omission is very striking. And to that point, sitting here today, I'm not aware of any intelligence products in the past year dedicated to foreign plans and intentions toward current and future U.S. elections. Director Gabbard, yes or no, ma'am, have you directed or been directed to stop or limit dissemination of intelligence reports or finish intelligence reporting concerning foreign plans?
Rubio told us that Israel was going to strike Iran regardless, and that doing so would have triggered Iranian retaliation against U.S. forces already in the region. And Director Ratliff, you seem to affirm that in comments just a few moments ago. So rather than tell Israel to stand down, the president joined the war. The Congress and the American people still don't know what the president's actual goals are. And yet, we have lost 13 U.S. service members.
Joaquin Castro.
But here's what we do know. The president has said that he wants a deal. He said Iran wants to make a deal and that he's not ready because, quote, the terms aren't good enough yet. Yet, they just killed Ali Larijani, the de facto leader of Iran, who, while not a friend of the United States, would have been the person to negotiate any agreement with. The president explicitly said that the United States did not strike Iran's energy infrastructure because, in his words, having to rebuild it, quote, would take years. Yet this morning, Israel struck the South Pars gas field, the world's largest natural gas reserve, triggering Iranian attacks on Qatari gas facilities. Oil prices are up 15% in the last 24 hours. In San Antonio, my hometown, where I represent, the cost of gas has gone up nearly 40% in 3 weeks. Last night, the president said that the United States knew nothing about the attack and called on Israel to stop similar attacks on energy. Israel denies this and says that the attack was cleared by the United States. So my question is, what does the intelligence community assess Israel's goals in this war to be? And are those goals aligned with the goals of the United States?
It's annoying.
I'm thinking carefully here about what can be said in this open setting versus a closed setting.
Are the goals aligned?
Yes. Answer the question,
The objectives
Toasty.
that have been laid out by the president are different from the objectives that have been laid out by the Israeli government.
And how do they differ?
We can see through the operations that the Israeli government has been focused on disabling the Iranian leadership and taking out several members, obviously beginning with the Ayatollah and the supreme leader. And they continue to focus on that effort.
And how does that differ from our goals?
The president has stated that his objectives are to destroy Iran's ballistic missile launching capability, their ballistic missile production capability, and their Navy, the IRGC Navy, and mine-laying capability.
So the death and destruction continues. The economic cost to the United States, to Israel, to the Gulf states, and to the world continues to increase. So I want to ask you, to the best of your knowledge, do you know whether Israel is supportive of the president's call to make a deal with Iran?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know Israel's position on that.
And to what do you attribute Israel's decision to strike Iranian energy infrastructure, despite President Trump's call to keep those facilities off limits?
I don't have an answer for that.
So they ignored the president. Do you agree with that?
I'm not privy to any of their deliberations or what went into their calculus in launching this or other attacks. We are not involved with in the operational element of this. We're providing continuously on a daily basis the intelligence assessments of the events that are occurring. And
I guess I know the FBI can because they're domestic, but can anybody else at the table provide any insight into that?
I guess I'm not sure what the question you're asking, Congressman Castro. I guess a couple of things. The goals that the president set out are clearly defined. The DNI related those. What was not included is a goal of the U.S.
Well, Director, let me start with this. Let me start with this question. You asked what my question is. Let me reclaim my time, Director. Come on. Do you know why Israel decided to strike that infrastructure, despite the fact that the president said it should be off limits?
I wouldn't speak for Israel.
What do you guys know? We're at war. What do you guys know?
We'll have to take that for the record.
Yes, let's take it for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to welcome the panelists here today. Today is March 19th. On April 19th, FISA goes dark. 702 goes dark. And it's been talked about many times, but up to 60% of the president's daily briefing is derived from FISA 702. And we look at the successes that we've had in protecting the homeland and also the conflicts the U.S. has been involved with, the flawless operation in Venezuela, Operation Fury in Iran, troop protection, the successes we've had on the battlefield in Ukraine, the recovery and release of the Hamas hostages in the tunnels in Israel, all derived from FISA 702. There is not a military operation that we've been involved with where FISA 702 was not, as Director Ratcliffe has said, been indispensable to the United States in the protection of our country. Director Patel has also said FISA 702 is indispensable. We're 30 days away from it going dark. Director Ratcliffe, can you clarify the president's position on an 18-month...
Skip ahead a little bit.
The query request of U.S. persons. We also require the General Counsel's Office and lawyers to come in and agree with that request before we can proceed. Also, we have we used to, before this, had a default which allowed queries.
Mr. Gabbard, it is your job and the job of your agency and department to assess the views of Iranian leadership, their policy beliefs and policy positions, correct?
Yes.
That includes now deceased Ali Khamenei of Iran, correct?
Yes.
And the now leader, his son Mujtaba Khamenei, correct?
Yes.
The son is considered more of a hardliner than his father. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So hardline that even some of Iran's leaders thought he was too aggressive. Isn't that correct?
That is the intelligence community assessment, yes.
Mujtaba, the son, is particularly close to the brutal Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and their most hardline commanders, correct?
That is the intelligence community assessment.
He was involved in ordering violent crackdowns on Iranian protesters, including their murder, correct?
Yes.
And we don't know if the son will continue his father's religious ban on developing nuclear weapons. Is that correct?
It is unknown at this time.
You testified before this committee last year that the elder, now deceased Khamenei, had in 2003 banned the nuclear weapons program or suspended it, correct?
There was a fatwa in place that stated that.
And that fatwa remained in place last year when you testified before this committee, correct?
Yes.
And that fatwa remained in place recently, correct?
As far as I know, it has not been lifted.
Yeah, you're aware of no information that would lift that fatwa?
I'm not aware of any intelligence reporting that states that.
Yeah.
To be clear on the Mojtaba, the son who has been named to replace him, it is unclear of his status or his involvement. He was injured very severely through one of the Israeli strikes, and so the decision-making is unclear about what's happening in the Iranian leadership.
So it's unclear. So we're less certain of the positions of Iranian leadership and their intentions than we were 60 days ago, correct?
Assessment.
Okay. Well, one of your jobs is to create products assessing Iran and the threats it poses to the United States, correct?
Yes.
And that includes potential outcomes for military action, correct?
It includes potential outcomes of a variety of scenarios.
Like in the likelihood of those outcomes?
Yes.
Generally, when you make assessments about threats facing the United States, you will look at, in Iran, in any instance, the likely scenarios that have come out of military action, correct?
The intelligence community takes all of those factors into account when they create these assessments.
When you look at the threats posed by foreign countries, you also assess timelines to those threats, correct?
What do you mean by timelines?
Like a breakout time, for example, for nuclear weapons or the development of ballistic missiles.
Yes, based on the information available at any given time.
In the timeline also for potential terrorist attacks, correct?
Broadly, yes.
It is
all
common
matters
practice for
available.
the IC to assess the timeline of all threats. Nuclear weapons development, ballistic, right?
Yes.
Ballistic weapons development.
Based on the information available, yes.
Terrorist attacks.
Same applies.
Cyber attacks. Timelines for all of those, correct?
When there is information available that point to that, yes.
In likelihood, as well as the timeline, correct?
Based on the information available.
Timing is important, is it not?
It is an important factor that goes into the assessment.
So it is your position sitting here today that you made no timeline determination as to threats that Iran had facing the United States, correct?
That's a very broad statement, but where the information is available, the intelligence community factors that into their assessment process.
Did you or the IC make any assessments as to the timing of potential threats facing the United States from Iran in the last 90 days?
I'm sure there was timelines factored into the intelligence assessments that were delivered.
Did any of them show imminence?
The imminent nature of a threat is determined by the president based on a totality of the intelligence and information provided to him.
That's your job.
There were attacks
That's your
anticipated within the
job.
next
Don't
90 days
understand
from
that.
Iran.
No.
It's too simplistic of a statement to say that because it depends on various scenarios occurring or not occurring.
Did those assessments show timelines for the threats that Iran posed to the United States?
The totality of threats, yes, there were timelines involved where it applied and where that information was available. But again, to your question about the determination of imminence, the president makes that determination based on the totality of information and intelligence.
The bottom line is there was no imminent threat, and you know that, and there's no product that shows that. I yield back.
Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I want to expand on the questioning from my colleague, Mr. LaHood, regarding FISA 702. Obviously, it is the imminent issue right before us. Will expire in a month. Unequivocally, the most critical national security tool our nation has to keep us safe from fentanyl, from foreign wars, and everything in between. Mainly to Director Ratcliffe, but any of you can answer this. One of the most perplexing debates that I've been subject to in my time here is this debate over what warrants are and when they're needed. In the 250-year history of this country, and going back to the very origins of law enforcement, we have always had a warrant requirement on the collection of evidence. We have never had a warrant requirement on the querying of already lawfully collected data, which is why we don't require police officers to get warrants when they run license plates, querying off of already lawfully collected DOT data. It's why we don't.
We already know it's going to be like a glazed face whenever we have Republicans up there. I'm only interested in like the grilling parts for the most part. So we're just gonna when there's a Republican senator, it's not really worth it for the most part. So we're just gonna skip ahead a little bit.
Gabbard, following the January 3rd, 2020 drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani, you gave a speech on the House floor 6 days later, on January 9th, 2020. In this speech, that is currently in the congressional record and available for anyone to view, you stated, quote, President Trump has committed an illegal and unconstitutional act of war, pushing our nation headlong into a war with Iran without any authorization from Congress, a war that would be so costly and devastating, it would make our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan look like a picnic. On February 28, 2026, the Trump administration, under which you are the president's principal intelligence advisor, launched an illegal and unconstitutional act of war, pushing our nation headlong into a war with Iran without any authorization from Congress. This war has already been costly and devastating. 13 American service members have lost their lives, including Chief Warrant Officer Robert Marsden from my home of Sacramento, California. And approximately 200 service members have been wounded. The Pentagon reported that the first 6 days of Operation Epic Fury cost $11.3 billion. That averages almost $2 billion per day. That was the first 6 days, and now we're in the 19th day of this war. That's ballooned into a regional conflict, putting the lives of Americans and our allies throughout the Middle East in danger. Director Gabbard, do you still believe that strikes against Iran that don't have congressional authorization constitute an illegal and unconstitutional act of war?
Congressman, thank you for the question. The cost of war weighs very heavily upon me and my colleagues here, especially for those of us who have experienced and seen the cost of war firsthand. My own personal and political views, as I mentioned earlier, I was asked and required by Congress and by the President in this role as the Director of National Intelligence to check those views at the door to ensure that the intelligence assessments are not colored by my personal views.
Director
and that's
Gabbard,
exactly what I'm responsible to deliver.
Do you still believe that war with Iran would be so costly and devastating that it would make our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan look like?
Yeah, she's not going to probably not answer the question because this is her, in the instance, will have to give her own political views. And because if she does get her own political views, her own personal perspective, in some cases it is undermining the president. So you can't really expect her to answer the question fully how she wants to answer the question, because if she does, in the cases look like it's undermining the president.
Once again, in this role, it is essential that I do not allow any of my personal views on any issues to color or bias the intelligence reporting that we deliver to you and to the president.
Director Gabbard, in this hearing 1 year ago, I asked some questions, and I'll paraphrase my exact question. It's like, we should keep politics out of this, even if the president disagrees with a directive, if it goes against his personal wishes, if he's considering an order that potentially is unconstitutional or illegal or compromises our security, I want your word that you will always provide and give the honest advice to the president, even if it will make him angry. I asked you that question. I'm going to read your answer. And to your specific question, the answer is yes. I will inform the president of that accurate, timely, unbiased intelligence reporting, whether it is something that agrees with an assumption or a view or an objective or not. That's my responsibility to him and to the American people. Director Gabbard, there is no imminent threat of nuclear breakout. Did you deliver that assessment to the president?
I have delivered the intelligence community's assessments to the president.
There was no imminent nuclear threat to the United States. There was no evidence of imminence that Iran was going to attack American assets. That was different from anything they've done over 4 decades. That was going to attack our homeland. There was no imminent threat. Imminent is defined in the dictionary as something that is about to happen. Not something that's been happening for 4 decades, not something that is going to happen 3 months from now, not something that's going to happen a year from now. Imminent said this is about to happen. Did you deliver that assessment to the president?
I delivered the intelligence community's objective analysis of the threats, the severity of those threats, and the scope, along with assessments of the different scenarios and contexts that exist within the Middle East.
The president owes it to the American people to go on television, to explain to the American people, to the service members who have died in action serving our country, why we are at war with Iran. He needs to go on television and explain that directly to the American people, what the imminent threat was.
Gentleman's time has expired. I would advise members that a vote has been called. It's a single vote, and if members want to shuttle back and forth so we can maintain the continuity of the hearing, we'll do that. So if you start to see it, just to our witnesses, you know how this works. They'll be moving in and out to go address that vote and then returning to their seat. But at this time, I recognize Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, for the record, I would like to submit an article from Politico dated February 24th, 2026, and the title of it is "Head of State of the Union Dems Demand Trump Make Iran Plans Public." I think most Americans understand that if the President of the United States makes those plans public, then the enemies get to see them as well.
Without objection, so ordered.
And that was the date of the State of the Union. Director Patel, I'm going to come to you very quickly, and then I'm going to move on. But I listened closely to Senator Langford's testimony yesterday about fraud and the other things that are going on. And I want to bring your attention. This was in March 25th of 2024. An unsuspecting Uber driver named Lalitha Talanda Hall drove to a house near Columbus, Ohio to pick up a package. She had no idea that the 81-year-old man who lived there had just received a series of phone calls from scammers who had threatened to kill him if he did not give the woman coming to his house $12,000 in cash. He killed the lady, so she's dead. He now has a life sentence. Are you aware of any action or investigation that the Justice Department has taken to pursue justice to bring the scammers and put them and make them pay for what they did?
I think you're referring to, Congressman, scam centers and scam compounds that are wreaking havoc on our citizens.
I'm referring to this individual case. This lady was murdered, and a man now has life in prison.
I can't speak to that individual case. I can tell you what we're doing generally if you wish, but as you said.
No, sir, I want to bring that case to your attention. I think that we need to pursue that. Someone is dead and someone else has life in prison. And it was the scammers that did it. My heart goes out to both families, but the scammers are the ones that need to pay the price. They're the guilty party here. Director Gabbard, you made a lot of changes at ODNI, changes that I think were necessary that I want to give you the chance to talk about. So what concrete steps in ODNI 2.0 what are they taking to address politicization, weaponization of intelligence, and unauthorized leaks? And how will these reforms help rebuild public trust in the intelligence community and help the United States of America?
Thank you very much for the question, Congressman. I committed to all of you before taking this role that I would execute on that, to bring back ODNI's focus on its core mission, to cut away any detractions away from that, and to ensure that our intelligence community was providing objective, timely, and relevant intelligence to the president and to policymakers. I conducted a ground-based review of the mission, the capabilities, and measuring effectiveness of ODNI, which resulted in a reduction of force by roughly 40% and a narrowing of focus and reorganization that consolidated and coordinated the experts within the ODNI in order to be able to deliver those effects. Leaking continues to be a prolific problem across the IC. We have and continue to implement tools and capabilities within the Zero Trust framework to be able to get after those leakers and refer them to the Department of Justice for investigation and prosecution.
All right, let's go and skip ahead a little bit.
To the U.S.
Thank you all for your service.
Gentleman's time's expired. Now recognize Mr. Gottheimer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I can start by talking about something I was disappointed in from the administration, about comments made by members of the administration that Israel drew the United States into conflict with Iran, seeming to buy conspiracy theories that scapegoat Israel, while dismissing that Iran poses a persistent threat to America and our service members and diplomats in the region. While the president then clarified this is not the case and that America entered into joint operations with our ally under our own accord, many still seem confused about what precipitated this conflict and the threat Iran posed to us directly. So if I could ask Director Ratcliffe just a couple questions, yes or no, if that's okay with you. Is the Iranian regime committed to America's destruction, in your opinion?
Yes.
Does the Iranian regime have American blood on their hands since its founding?
Democrats action is too.
Has Iran plotted assassination attempts
That's
against Americans on
crazy.
American soil?
A Democrats action
Was Iran
is.
developing a nuclear weapon prior to our military action last June? And did Iran remain committed to developing a nuclear weapon in the lead up to this conflict?
Yeah, so I want to clarify on that because there's been much talk about a fatwa against the development of a nuclear weapon.
Can you come back to that 1 second? Let me finish.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. If left unchecked, do you think Iran would have the ability to develop missiles capable of reaching the United States?
Yes.
Did Israel force the U.S.'s hand and make us take action, as some have claimed?
No.
Director Gabbard, do you agree with the CIA's director's assessment on that last question in
Yes.
particular? Great. Do you want to go back to that point you want to make?
Yeah, much has been made by some about a fatwa against the development of nuclear weapons. Notwithstanding the fatwa, what we know.
Breaking news. Iran says IRGC spokesperson killed in U.S.-Israeli attack. Oh, shit. It's another one down now. I'm going to read that and cover that tomorrow.
And the intelligence community is in agreement on this, is that Iran possesses at least 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to weapons grade 60%, which doesn't have a civilian use. The only use for that would be the development of nuclear weapons.
Thank you, Director. Director Gabbard, I want to raise serious concerns about your recent hiring of Dan Caldwell, a strict critic of U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East, who's argued that U.S. forces in the Middle East are, quote, more of a burden than a benefit, has claimed that Iran's nuclear program does not pose a risk to America, despite the IC's assessment to the contrary. Dan has also said that our relationship with Israel has no benefit to American national security. This follows the resignation of Joe Kent this week, a senior ally of yours who is a conspiracy theorizing white supremacist with a tattoo panzer referring to Nazi tanks. He has made known his backwards.
That last name already tells me right now. And he's a Democrat, too, from New Jersey. Yeah, that last name already tells me right there exactly why he's grilling them about Joe Kent and Dan Caldwell. That last name's already telling right now.
Opinions of Israel and his
if you know, you know.
Resignation letter, scapegoating them for U.S. intervention in Iran and Iraq. Director, what role do you anticipate Mr. Caldwell playing in shaping intelligence assessments or internal discussions related to Iran and Israel? And can you guarantee to this committee that no individuals in your leadership are undermining the objectivity of intelligence at this critical moment?
Sir, my understanding is one of my elements sought to hire Dan Caldwell months ago for a purely administrative role that would not have any position over the intelligence analysis or assessments on any topic.
Thank you. Director, as you know, the Iranian regime has been responsible for the deaths that we've talked about of scores of Americans since coming to power in '79. Iran and its terror proxies must be crushed. I've been clear on that point in the last weeks and throughout my time in Congress. I supported the decisive action taken on February 28th to remove key regime leaders and degrade Iran's ballistic missile and naval capabilities. However, I think it's really important the administration make its goals clear to Congress and to the American people. Director, were you in a meeting to discuss a possible strike on Iran?
Congressman, there were several meetings that were held in advance. I'm sure I was in at least some of them.
Did the intelligence community brief the president on the potential impacts the conflict could have on global supply chains and on oil and gas prices prior to the outbreak of hostilities? Were you in a meeting? Were you in any meetings where that came up?
Yes, that is the intelligence community's assessments, and those were provided.
Director, did the IC, Director Ratcliffe, if I can ask this to you, did the IC brief the president on who would succeed the supreme leader if he was killed and the likelihood that a replacement would be a hardliner?
Was the president, say it again, was the president?
Did the IC brief the president on who would succeed the supreme leader if he was killed and the likelihood that a replacement would be a hardliner or could be a hardliner?
So to be clear, objectives were, but you can.
Director Patel, does Iran
Iran, as the world's largest state sponsor of terror, does pose a continuing threat. Percent increase in Iranian spy actors willing to steal our information and attack our citizens. So that's just one example, sir.
Thank you. I yield.
Dr. Jackson.
Good morning. First off, I want to say thank you all for your time today, and thank you for our service to our country. Much appreciated. I thank the chairman for his opening remarks on anomalous health incidents, AHI. As many of you are aware, one of my primary responsibilities in this particular committee, I am the subcommittee chairman of Oversight and Investigations, where the investigation of AHI is and has been a central oversight effort. And so I'm going to ask a quick question about this. Director Ratcliffe, during the Biden administration, the CIA very poorly, in my opinion, handled this issue. Since then, a CIA doctor has provided perjured testimony under oath and obstructed our congressional investigation. A quick question for you. Do you affirm that the CIA personnel are under no direction to make false statements to Congress in order to conceal?
All right, this one's important.
Mr. Gomez, I want to make sure that all members have had an opportunity to vote because they are prepared to close that vote on the floor. If you haven't, please go do so at this time. Looks like we're good. All right, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to get right into it. Director Gabbard, last year you testified that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon. Do you stand by that statement? Yes or no?
Context matters with that
yes
statement.
Or no?
Iran had all of the
reclaim my
materials
time.
and
I reclaim my
capabilities
time
to do so.
Mr. Chairman, I reclaim my time. It's an easy answer. You either stand by what you said last year or not.
It is a serious question that requires the totality
Director Gabbard,
of the
I reclaim my
information
time. I reclaim my time.
God damn, bro, calm down.
President Trump was asked about your
Why are these
testimony.
Californian?
He said you were wrong. Were you lying or not?
Why are all these Californian congressmen are always fucking like erotic, bro? Damn, like they're so fucking erotic and shit like that, bro. Like, damn, calm down. I understand your feelings are in the, I'm understanding you love this shit so much, but like, bro, relax. Stop having cortisol spikes, man. Come on, just take a chill pill, bro. Like, you ain't gotta get so mad, bro. Damn, these Democrats from California are something else, bro. Not the smartest, not the brightest, but they're damn sure erotic types. They're damn sure their cortisols spike at high degrees. I would say that.
I stand by the intelligence community's complete assessment.
Director Ratcliffe, when it came to the director's testimony, she said that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon last spring in Congress, and so the Supreme Leader has not authorized the nuclear weapons program. Do you agree with what she said or not? Yes or no?
The director's right here. She can speak for herself.
Oh, so I thought this was an intelligence community briefing. Let's move on. Trump also said he didn't care what you thought or said. Should he care about what you have to say when it comes to intelligence?
That is actually very true. He actually doesn't care what Tulsi Gabbard says. I mean, he undermines a lot what Tulsi Gabbard says. I mean, he clearly does not respect Tulsi Gabbard. I don't know why this is a shock to people. Come on.
I continue to provide the president with the intelligence community's assessments on all matters.
So let me just kind of get this straight. The department, you said that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon last year. President Trump said he didn't care what you thought, and you were wrong. They engaged in Operation Midnight Hammer. He then says it was obliterated. We hear later reports that in open source reporting that it was only set back by a few months. Then at the beginning of this war, he said that they were weeks away. I just want to kind of get a sense of, were they weeks away of achieving a nuclear weapon? Yes or no?
Congressman, this is a serious matter, and you've made some very serious mischaracterizations
yes
here.
or no? Were they weeks
and so
away?
It would be
Yes
a
or no?
disservice to you and the American people to answer this question with a mere yes or
Reclaiming
no.
my time. Were they weeks away or not? The American people need to know if this was an imminent threat or not. If they're weeks away or not. If they're months away or not. None of this dodging. Were they an imminent threat? Yesterday you said that only the president, the only person who can determine what is an imminent threat is the president of the United States. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes, I do.
Director Ratcliffe, do you agree with that assessment? That the president is the only person that can determine if something is an imminent threat or not?
The president's commander-in-chief gets to make a decision about what's an imminent threat. The intelligence community, well, the intelligence,
reclaim my time.
The intelligence community has provided a body of intelligence that supports
the reason why
the decision
is that if the president can determine and ignore what you're doing, why do you guys even have a job? Why do you even advise them? So you're saying tomorrow the president of the United States can say China is an imminent threat, and then he can take his own, no matter what the intelligence says, he can take his own action. So that's what you're basically saying. Okay, let's go on. Director Gabbard, you said that North Korea has intercontinental ballistic missiles that can reach the homeland. Yet, the Defense Department said that Iran was at least 10 years away from achieving an intercontinental ballistic missile that can reach the homeland. Which one is a more serious threat, North Korea or Iran?
These threats are taken within the context of the total body of intelligence reporting.
So that's it should be, and that's my point. it's not just about having the capability of building a weapon. It's if they can actually deliver that weapon. If they can, they have the intention of doing that. How many weeks away are they? I haven't we haven't heard that there were weeks away. We haven't heard that there were months away. But that's what we're waiting for. Imminent to me means is that they're mobilizing troops. They're moving things into position. Artillery. They're getting ready to attack. But everything that we've heard is that this is not the case.
Gentleman's time's expired. Mr. Klein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here and for the work you do. It's a marvel that just 1 year of strong leadership from the White House has shifted the conversation in this room from that of appeasement and passivity from the Biden administration to that of American strength brought about by the doctrine in Venezuela and Operation Epic Fury in Iran. And it's not lost on me that as we sit here, we have one side of the dais talking a big game on threats, and yet they're unwilling to even fund our Department of Homeland Security. I want to thank President Trump's leadership in each of your efforts. Because of your efforts, Americans are safer today with 2 less despots to deal with. Nevertheless, there remains work to be done. While Venezuela and Iran are in decline, aggression from adversarial nations like China and Russia and near constant threats of terrorism and cyber warfare continue to persist. The Chinese Communist Party in particular remains a top adversary that routinely deals in bad faith, and this was highlighted most recently by White House Office Director of National Drug Control Policy Sarah Carter when she delivered recent remarks in Vienna saying, quote, "We know that China's weak export controls and lax enforcement allow its chemical industry to foster friendships with the drug cartels. At the same time, China's overly effective controls over rare earth minerals wreak havoc on legitimate industries," end quote. Of course, we're now seeing reports of a new synthetic opioid called cyclorphine that is said to be 10 times more potent than fentanyl and undetectable on fentanyl test strips. As you know, President Trump may meet with President Xi in the near future, where trade and export controls will most certainly be discussed. Director Gabbard, what is your assessment of the quality and quantity of AI compute that China can indigenously manufacture?
The majority of this question should be addressed in a closed hearing. The intelligence community's assessment is that China continues to rapidly advance its AI capability.
Do you assess that export controls on semiconductor manufacturing equipment and AI compute have been effective, slowing the development and deployment of Chinese AI?
The intelligence.
All right, here we go.
Yes, Congress. I can think of better ways to finish things for you, but we appreciate your being here. I want to respectfully ask you and each of you, if you have full-time personnel dedicated to analyzing and collecting foreign threats on the 2026 elections, and if so, just yes or no, and how many personnel we have.
Congressman, I'll get you the exact number, but certainly we have people paying attention to this.
Thank you. Congressman, yes, we have an election crimes coordinator in each one of our 56 field offices and election crimes coordinators at headquarters. Thank you.
Yes, we have personnel dedicated both to election security as well as foreign intelligence related to election influence.
Thank you.
Yes, we do as well. I don't know the numbers, but what we do collect, and we contribute to the larger IC coordination.
Thank you.
And Representative Quigley, we do not, to my knowledge, have anyone at DIA on that topic.
A question again for all of you. Well, first, Director Gabbard, you've seen the reports about whether or not Russia has helped Iran in targeting in the current war in Iran. Can you confirm that, or is that something we're going to save for a closed session?
We'll save that for the closed session, sir.
But within that context, on CNBC, Steve Witkoff said on a recent call with President Trump, Russian leaders denied they were sharing this target information, shock, surprise, all that they would do that about U.S. military assets with the Iranians. Mr. Witkoff said, so you know, quote, we can take them at their word. Let's hope they're not doing this. Just from your own sense, and from many of you who have been fighting in the Cold War for a long time, a long lost sense of a Reagan doctrine, just general, it is your sense that you can take Putin at his word on anything involving military, diplomatic, or intel assessment?
Hey, Congressman, from an intelligence standpoint, we don't take anyone at their word. From a foreign standpoint, we execute intelligence operations to provide that information to decision makers.
I appreciate that. Mr. Patel, Director. I agree with the General.
Yes, I agree. We don't take anyone at their word. And from an intelligence standpoint, we don't rely on single sources of intelligence and always look for multiple sources to confirm.
Director.
Yeah, Congressman, I actually answered this question yesterday. I don't take Putin, Xi, Kim Jong-un, Supreme Leader, any foreign adversary leader at their word. Rely on our intelligence to reflect what those adversaries are actually doing.
General.
We absolutely do not take any of those enemies at their word.
Can I get a hallelujah? Ms. Gabbard, I understand that you have to put your own personal views aside in your position, but I honestly think that the issue our grandchildren are going to be most upset about us with is climate change. So,
right. Stating if China were ahead of us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I yield back.
Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Patel, you had a question from Dr. Jackson about the shutdown we're in now with Homeland Security, and I believe you said that this would be harmful to America because of the threat from Iran. Is that correct? Did I recall that correctly?
Generally, yes, sir.
How many days before we invaded Iran did you know we were going to launch an invasion?
We can get into those details in a classified setting, but I work with my colleagues across the spectrum here to give me advance warning so that we can reinforce.
Was it 2 days, 3 days, a month?
It was sometime before that, sir.
Sometime before that. So with that knowledge, Why did you fire at least a dozen agents in Counterintelligence Unit 12 that specializes in Iran counterintelligence, which makes us much less secure and safe with this war going on from Iranian attacks potentially against our country?
As I said earlier, Congressman, I don't work on timelines when these terminations occur. They're internal investigations conducted by the careers at the FBI that highlight unethical or inappropriate conduct, and it's up to me to make the decision. But our Iran Threats Mission Center has never been more resourced, as I've highlighted a 43% increase in counterespionage arrests from Iran alone and 360 ongoing terrorism investigations with Iran-affiliated
And the people you fired, those 12 people, they were experts on Iran, were they not?
I don't believe so.
They worked in counterintelligence, did they not?
I'm taking you at your word, sir. I'm not familiar with
You're the chief director. I'm not. You should know the answer. You fired the people. Where did they work?
Oh,
People
shit.
were terminated for violating their ethical obligations and the high standards.
Was the ethical violations that they dealt with the case of the classified documents that were found at the bathroom in Mar-a-Lago, was that the ethical issue?
As I said earlier, all those matters are pending litigation, so I'm not going to comment on them.
Director Gabbard, are you familiar with CI-12?
I'm not, Congressman.
Okay. Let me ask you this question. In the intelligence community's unclassified annual threat assessment from last year, it said, quote, Iran's large conventional forces are capable of inflicting substantial damage to an attacker, executing regional strikes, and disrupting shipping, particularly energy supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. It seems the IC was entirely correct in its assessment about Iranian retaliation in the Strait. Did the IC's assessment about the Iranian capabilities in the Straits of Hormuz change in the past year?
No, Congressman.
Does Iran still have the capability to threaten shipping in the Straits of Hormuz with missiles, mines, and small boats?
Their capabilities have been largely degraded, but yes, they still have means to threaten passage through the Strait of Hormuz.
And how long can they keep the strait closed?
Based on current events, I'd have to get an updated assessment from the intelligence community on that.
Did you have an analysis of the impact of a war on global supply chains and the price of oil and gas?
I believe that assessment may have come from the Department of Treasury or Energy.
It didn't come through your office?
It came from their element within Department of Energy or Energy.
Do you know if the president was briefed on those assessments?
I believe so, but I can't confirm.
So if he was briefed on those assessments that was a problem, and the Straits of Hormuz could be shut off, and that's causing a great problem in the world's economy with oil prices going up to like $120 or something a barrel, and an effect on all countries' economies, why would the president not have taken action to strengthen defense around the Straits of Hormuz?
The
pursuit continued under the Bush, Obama, Trump 45, Biden now, Trump 47. That pursuit continued. Then last June, Operation Midnight Hammer. Nuclear program was dealt a significant setback. But not only that, the autocratic, illegitimate regime in Tehran witnessed firsthand that the American resolve under this administration should be taken very seriously. I want to read you a few quotes. Iran will never be permitted to build a nuclear weapon. Barack Obama 15.
Shit, look who the fuck it is.
Being easier this time, but
Dan fucking Pirate Cardwell. Dan Crenshaw. My bad, not Dan Cardwell. Dan Oi Matey Crenshaw. Oi Matey. He just got voted out of office. He would not be. He's going to finish out his term right now. The pirate has shown up. The rhino has shown up here. Of course he's going to have a glaze vest.
I still want to go over the myths that the public believes and that many members of this Congress believe. Mr. Patel, I'll focus on you here. Myth number one has to do with 702 versus FISA Title I. Trump was targeted with FISA 702. Is that a myth?
That's a myth. It's not true.
Well, it's just real quick. How was President Trump targeted under crossfire again?
I think that's it. There's really nothing left besides just like a bunch of glaze fest. So that's it. I think we pretty much have gotten through most of the grilling right now on that. So with that being said, that is today's stream. I will be back in a couple of hours with my review to Tucker Carlson's interview with Joe Kent. There was a press briefing from the Secretary of War. I'm going to react to that too as well. And yeah. And also we're going to react to Iran spokesperson, the IRGC spokesperson had just got killed recently. I got the live breaking news right now as I was live. So I'm going to read some news articles for now, get study up, and then we're going to cover the news in a couple of hours. I might go live at like 7, 8, depending. Might go live at 10. I'll be up for at least a couple more hours until it's time for me to go live again at 10 o'clock. I'll see you guys at 10 o'clock. Till then, you have a good night, and I'll see you till then.